House here, and Ben Himmel.
Here.
Right, we've got a quorum, so let's continue. Everyone has the agenda. Any issues or go backs or edits? Or are we good to continue as written?
I think it's good though.
Yes.
Good to continue for now, anyways.
Cool. And then public comment.
If you guys will wait just a moment, I do have my computer.
Excellent.
It's here.
Josh, here you go.
This is it.
We should.
You'll have to pull that chair in.
Okay.
What kind of tight?
All sits as well.
Well, hey, whatever.
Hired labor.
I think you could sneak that chair. There's lots of room right over here in the corner.
Okay, I'm going to now mark Adam Hay present.
Okay.
So I think you're on the public comment.
Yes.
As long as I don't knock everything off the walls.
Is the public have any comment today?
I do have one comment today.
Okay.
So, and you saw which 824 to go to Lane. So I know you guys are talking about odd or even year elections. So there was a study that was completed a couple of years back, looking at various municipalities who did odd and even year elections. What they found was moving to an on-cycle election, especially to elections held on the same day as presidential contests, has real potential to alter who participates in local democracy. In California, holding city elections concurrently with statewide and national contests reduces the overrepresentation of whites and older Americans, and to a smaller extent, the well-off. Just as reference, TMAC, when it was on this previous election cycle for the November election, we had 15,880 votes. Home rule, the commission that formed you guys, 14,854. We had under 8,000 votes cast or ballots cast during the April election. We see something in between those two when we talk about an off-cycle election. So just something to keep in mind. So that is all. Thank you.
Did you have them conducted that study?
I can grab it and send it to Amy to forward on to you guys.
Yes. That would be appreciated. Okay. No other public comments. We'll move on to our general business. So our first order is discussion topics. We're going to do our meeting, talking about our meeting dates and our scheduled topics. So we wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page going through for the dates we're going to have meetings. We also had some request for the attorney, Hillary Graham, to attend more meetings. So she'll be able to come 2 meetings a month, as opposed to just the one.
That's
So,
awesome.
That's
Yeah.
definitely better.
and if everyone had a chance to look through the meeting schedule.
Can I let you, that'll be on the second and fourth
Second and fourth.
Thursdays.
Okay.
She can't do the first and third.
Was the fourth one? No, the third one's when we're doing that.
Yes.
Hopefully doing that. Cool.
And that's because of the same reason in this room is just a room conflict. So.
Mhm.
And then if everyone had a chance to look through the schedule of meetings, we tried to hash it out based on Malcolm's input for availability of town staff. When we would think, Hillary would be most useful, as well as going by the Eagle Town Charter, just to make sure we are using those topics like as our topic headers. But since we have it as a carry forward topic that we are open to renaming and reordering things, that's fine.
I do have one change we
Okay.
I would like to propose. The municipal court judge cannot be here on January 26th. She'll be out of the state.
Okay.
So if we could swap the topics for January 26th and February 9th, she can be here on February 9th.
Okay,
So
and
everybody's,
both of those days, Malcolm, you have
he has a
conflict.
conflict, so I figured that.
Any issues from anyone about that? Like I said, we're open to reordering as we need to, so
Yeah, you do,
Yeah.
that's why.
I don't think
figured
the
that was-
order that we hit the topics matters personally.
Just as long as we know,
Yeah.
after we what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
what our homework is.
Yeah, so we can practice, prepare. Correct.
Yeah, just, I know when I went through all the other charters, I think we may have some different articles we're gonna put in over time.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So yeah, just from now going forward, we're gonna go by the topic, just for preparation's sake, not when we're actually proposing the changes, but we're gonna use the article titles and numbering from the Eagle Charter, just to do our planning. Until we get to the parts where we're gonna add our own topics and such. Okay? Anyone have any thoughts or issues, concerns about that?
No.
All right. Let's move forward then for comments on the previously discussed articles. Since we've only done one article so far, this should be two. Sorry, one meeting, that's true. Two articles. I know Chelsea, you weren't here last time. Did you have any
No.
any further thoughts on any of the
I
previous?
agree with the consensus you reached on each of those in the meeting.
Perfect. I think actually the only thing that I had for a go back, let's see.
I have one thing if you're looking that up.
Yeah, perhaps.
On the elections, we didn't say how to elect anyone. If that's just the default to most votes win. Or if we're gonna talk about that and get into the offices.
And for example, some charters talked about if you have a 2-year term and a 4-year term open, it has to do with the order. And so the person with the most votes gets the 4-year term.
I think, isn't that on for today?
Yeah, for the most part, I've seen it on the Article 3. like
In the elected
elected
offices,
offices,
yeah.
It seems that
Thinking
is.
too. Yeah, and I think, again, we'll circle back to the even or odd years today as well, because
Yeah.
we'll be figuring out how that all
Yeah.
works,
So-
what that transition looks like.
Just going from what we talked about last meeting, the topics we're carrying forward, not necessarily for this meeting, but to consider in the future. The open space section about how we handle that, odd or even years for elections. Ordering sections and the finance section, just to talk about, I know you had a suggestion for changing the potentially changing the
Fiscal year.
fiscal year. But that was maybe,
I don't think we need to talk about that until finance.
Yeah.
And Hillary already got back and
Yeah.
we'll discuss it.
and then how elections are held as well. So I had a question then about, that was one of my thoughts after we left last time, was if we were gonna talk about ranked choice voting, would that go under today's meeting, or would that have been under the Articles 1 and 2
And choice voting for what?
for our local elections, for
Oh.
council? Yeah.
For like
Putting it
residents to
under-
make that choice.
Yeah.
Putting it under elections I think would make the most sense.
I think it also makes sense to build out the offices.
Yeah.
And we know who we're voting for and then
And then we
back
can
to
go back.
elections on how we vote for them.
Yeah. Okay, concur. Then, yeah, we'll keep that in mind. I wanted to talk about it. I had some thoughts about it, but when we get back to the elections portion, we can bring that up. Okay. So, let's see, any other discussions or comments on running draft? I know Hillary sent out the running draft that she had it drafted. And the only thing she had a couple of comments on that. She did switch from Roman numerals to Arabic numerals. And she asked us if we wanted to add a descriptor of what a council manager form of government is, because some of the other, you think so, Bob?
You think that'd be beneficial?
Well, I tend to agree that it would be good for people reading it. Because we had discussions about.
Yeah.
knowing exactly what it was.
Right, and then it would help break down a little bit the power,
Yeah.
assuming we're gonna talk about having a separate office for mayor today, then we can give her direction to add that in and, you know, talk about the different powers for mayor and the council members.
Didn't some of the charters have a definition section?
Yes,
So we just break that out.
so, yeah,
Some did,
Some
some
have
had
it
it
set.
right in the journal provision, some put it.
right, they have it in all different places. So if you look at what I sent out, and you search for definitions, you'll see different people in different places.
I think, yeah, if we end up being overburdened by having too many things defined in too many different places, we might want to break out into a definition section, but that's one that we can carry that as a go back as well. Just to, when we get to reassessing. Let's see. And then, yeah, she added the provision about the utilities and public works. And then, yeah, we just have to make sure we're confirming all cross references as we go through. Okay, anyone else have anything for previous discussions? For previous topics? No? All right, let's move forward to the meat of today's meeting, then, the elected offices section, which is tentatively marked as Article 3. Okay. Before we get started, does anyone have any general thoughts they wanted to share about form of government or, you know, powers, numbers, anything like that?
No, I'm not, no.
So do we, I guess the first article is council should have a mayor and 6 council members and that they're separate offices. Do we want to stick with 6 and a mayor? So 7 total? That's fine.
Brighton does 8-1, Wheat Ridge does 8-1. Thornton and Boulder also do 8-1, the ones that I analyzed.
I mean, I think it depends on what we decide down below.
Okay,
On
the
how-
districting. and stuff.
Yeah, on how we're gonna district, if we have super populated areas, we might need to give them to, if we have wards, you know what I mean? So I don't know that we necessarily need to
Okay,
put that in stone quite yet,
I think that's a
Until
good
we-
idea.
discuss the rest of it.
Okay. And yeah,
Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, so we can reassess the numbers, but I think my only thought here was we want to keep it as an odd number, just so we don't have deadlocks.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think 7 or 9 is my goal.
Okay. And yeah, we are bigger than those other towns, so.
Wheat Ridge, we're not bigger than, we're the smallest on my list. Wheat Ridge is 32,000 in 2020 census data, so we were 30,000.
Yeah, pretty close.
So we do have potential for growth.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
so,
we grew like crazy.
Okay. So yeah, number 2 is at large, but then Hillary added a note to go back and look at this carve out that she had for a monument. I guess, do we want to talk about that now, since that'll definitely take up a big chunk of today's discussion, or do we want to go through and discuss other things? I think this one would probably affect discussions on other topics down below, so maybe we'll do the districting. All right. So do we want to get into our districting now? Yeah,
Sure.
let's do it.
Here we go.
Actually, before we start, Malcolm, can you give us kind of your thoughts on the matter?
Sure. Well, I did talk with Kendra about that this morning, and she said you've just need roughly equal, if you're going to have districts, they need to have roughly equal population in each district, and they need to be contiguous. My experience is from observing Bremerton, Washington, which has 9 council districts, I believe, and it's a city of about 40,000 people. 9 was really too many districts. It got so small, it kind of made the council members, I would say, somewhat parochial in their perspective on things. And observing from afar, I wasn't in that city, I was the county administrator there, but it seemed like Bremerton was always having inter-council disputes about things. The other experience I have is in Louisville, where they have 3 different wards. They call them wards instead of districts, 2 members per each ward. Every 10 years, they adjust the boundaries to make sure that they're roughly equal in population. There are provisions for adjusting the council or the ward boundaries are in their charter and are very clear. And the procedure for adjusting the boundaries after the census numbers come out is pretty straightforward, and it seems to work relatively well.
Do you have any idea how much it costs them to do that redistricting?
I do believe they actually.
I haven't, I reached out to their city clerk and I have not heard back from her yet. So I don't know what, unless you were there.
My recollection the last time, and that would have been in 2010 when I was there, it was, I'm guessing, less than $50,000 at that point for consulting services to assist with that. I actually asked the state demographer's office if they had any tools that might help us do that, so it could be done internally, but so far I haven't heard back from them.
Yeah, I did a little research, and there are beginning to be more and more like tools for automated redistricting, where you just put in as much like GIS data. You just like link in the GIS map of the town with population densities and all of that.
And that's all open to us.
Yeah.
And we could probably have our GIS department assist with
Yeah, once we get a data set from the demographer's office, we ought to be able to make that publicly available. So,
Right. And that way it's not subject to bias or anything like that, because it's all automated, and you give it its like big picture goals, just like equal, like you said, equal size districts, contiguous, all of that, and it'll do the math and do it for you.
the other provisions, at least in Louisville, they have 2 council members per each of the 3 districts. And they're staggered so that one of those council members is up every 2 years. So it kind of alternates the staggering.
And that's an interesting discussion. So I think that one you said too, and I was about to ask the question before you said it. One of the advantages is overlap, like you were just talking about. One of the disadvantages is if the district gets large, you can solve the representation problem of certain areas not having somebody as local or representative. So what is the sense of the group?
But wait, it sounds like what you're doing is you're getting at the old town may be swallowed by some,
For example,
other district.
I think it will be. Old Town is a tiny population compared to
Yeah.
every other neighborhood.
and when you
If the goal is equal and contiguous, that's very true.
if you look now, like Colliers has 2 representatives, in fact, Flatiron Meadows has 2 representatives.
Not intentionally.
And today,
I'm talking, yeah. It's all that large. They just happen to live there.
and so I think you could end up with the same type of thing happening if you have 2 representatives per district, if the districts, depending on the districts are formed. Again,
Are those our goals?
that's what I'm asking you.
I think we should start there. Do we have the same goals as what Malcolm has observed?
I question. I guess I worry a little bit about making it all automated.
Well, it wouldn't always be.
In a sense of like, Vista Ridge, for instance, is massive, right? It's huge. But we don't want to split them into separate districts, because that's like, if that happened, and a line happened to get drawn there, we wouldn't want to split neighborhoods, I don't think, because we don't want to, I don't know how to explain this.
Like, you want to group by common concern.
Correct, yes, exactly.
But, okay, so we don't have any neighborhoods today. I meant to look this up and forgot. We don't have any neighborhoods today across County Line Road. They're split between counties.
No,
I don't think so.
Yeah, there's a map
Right
right
there.
there.
See, and that's, I've gone back and forth on at-large and wards, because when we bought here in 01, there's around 6,000 people. There's about 35,000 now. If you look at that map, we're gonna get Parkdale, Spring Hill, Westerly, Morgan Hill's going to expand, Colliers, Erie Highlands,
Westwood's in Spring.
and so you create these wards, and you're gonna have to adjust them so often to have equal representation that it almost doesn't make sense to do it now. Wait until the population kind of
Our growth is a little bit more.
stable,
Because
more complete, and then
Don't you have to have census data to do that?
Right.
So you can't do it until 10 years?
You would do it every 10 years. You wouldn't do it.
It would become unequal for 10 years.
and that almost seems too long. I mean,
So I guess I'm wondering, why do we have to have one or the other? Because there are charters out there that are blended. They have wards and they have at large. Why couldn't you do it?
That's
could.
just my suggestion.
We could, I would suggest that we have 5 wards, split it into quarters, and then a second or a 5th ward just for Old Town. And then mayor at large and one other at large councilman that would automatically move into pro tem. That would be my suggestion. I think that'd be easiest and the cleanest, but.
I'm for equal representation and I'm very aware of the Old Town problem. I'm not sure they should get a.
The problem that you have, not
but that's where my thought came from years ago. It's like Old Town just is unfairly treated.
It is.
And
Thank you for acknowledging it.
well,
And that's true. It's so true. And decisions are made all the time without any representation from the people that actually live there that are affected by this. And I think it's really important that we give them a voice.
So if we do 7 representatives, each representative would be 14% of the population. Old Town is nominally 5%. So they'd be significantly overrepresented.
Right.
For now, but aren't we getting,
Is Old Town growing as fast as the
are
rest?
we getting like a condensed housing?
Yeah, they're putting
Like-
is that what's going on there
But
at
it's not-
Erie Junction, and they just approved that new affordable housing there,
Yeah.
right at the edge of Old Town.
Yeah, but that's still, no, it's not that many units. I know because Habitat's thinking of, was planning on bidding to help build.
I mean, if Old Town had 5,000 residents.
Right.
It'd be workable, but is it scheduled to grow that much in 10 years?
I think we would, my feeling is we would look at that in 10 years. I don't think, I still think it should be one person on vote. I'm only one member.
What do you mean one person, one vote?
At large for everyone?
No, what I mean is that the districts should all be the same size roughly. So making Old Town its own district would be one person, 2 votes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you walk that forward a little bit, you got, what if Old Town was inside a district that
Right.
included Erie Village or
Yeah, for
something on the other side of county line? There's a bunch of new stuff going on over there. So like, there's a likelihood they get a representative in there, but it's not.
Yeah.
And if you have 2 representatives, if it's it's split in 3, then it's even more likely.
Yeah,
You got like a north, a middle, and a south, so you don't have to try to respect the county line anymore, because that you may grow. If you try to respect the county line, you may grow heavily in one side or the other.
and I totally agree with what you're saying.
I'm just looking at where we have the new neighborhoods, it looks like.
I still feel like you have to respect
We're
the
only
county line.
landlocked on one side,
But
but
I-
not so landlocked on the other
I
side.
still think you
that-
have to respect the county line because they're such drastically different counties.
Yeah, but I think the neighborhoods are changing.
True.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the newer neighborhoods in Will County are much different from the old neighborhoods. As far as-
I don't disagree.
Still a pain in the ass.
I don't think as many people move into Weld or Boulder County as much as they move into Erie.
Yeah.
I live in Weld County. I didn't purchase there because it was Weld County. I just purchased it in a house in Erie. Of
Yeah,
course,
It took us a while to figure out we were even in Wells. It was when we started signing the kids up for school. We were like, oh, okay.
but actually the school districts are different from the county.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how are my kids are now?
The Fulton County is a big school district.
Oh, yeah. Well, mine are not.
So,
one thing to keep in mind is
Chelsea, you have.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't like the idea of automating it of sorts to match where our population is and giving it like one person, one vote by making sure that we're equally dividing. And it may not be able to be like neighborhood by neighborhood, but I mean, me in Colliers Hill, I don't think I don't think as a whole our population's all that different, Erie Highlands or Vista Ridge or what have you. I don't think that splitting like a named neighborhood is gonna have a significant impact on shared interest because we're not that huge to start with, you know.
Is there any way, after you're done?
I'm done. Yeah,
You're good? Okay. So I'm definitely conflicted on this, for sure. Like, I almost saw this becoming a multiple meeting topic, unfortunately, because obviously it's a very serious issue. I see it all the ways, but I also do know, I read like the master plan and the comprehensive plan, whatever you guys call it. And the big theme has been local identity. And I feel that in order to maintain that local identity, we need to respect, even though the population of Old Town is small, they still deserve a voice. And these are the people that have been there for generations, and so that's why I lean that way. But, with that said, I see the other side and I beat this and I thought about it every night, all week, I do feel that there's something to be said about respecting that local identity and having that token person that represents Old Town, that is the voice that is like, hey guys, because Erie's growing as is, and the rest of Erie is all gonna have plenty of representation.
Well, what makes besides the history and the longevity, what makes the Old Town residents worthy of a more dense representation?
Well, because they've seen changes happen that they didn't agree with.
Well, so is everybody.
Years of lack of representation, years of not having a voice, years of, $750,000 houses coming in that raise our property taxes.
Yeah.
Some of us lived in Old Town because it was the affordable place to live.
Single hauler carriers, all of it, there's so much, I feel like
Where
there's
do
so
I
much stuff
start? Where do I
happening.
stop?
So I don't,
There's a lot that happens.
I know that's a sensitive question. I have to ask. It has to be put on the table because people are gonna ask.
I understand. And I think there's also something to take into consideration looking at Old Town, especially now the business district along Briggs should, don't business owners along Briggs have a say what happens around them as well?
That's another topic.
See, that was the.
Sorry.
No,
it's
it's all right.
fine.
But
I
we
think- no,
talked
you're fine.
about extending voting to include business owners.
Well, I just want to be able, beside the fact that I'm the token, the token problem, it's been very frustrating. We've had people from Old Town who have tried to run at large in the past. And we didn't get very far because we don't have maybe the name recognition, or we're not as well known, or who knows, I don't know. So is it fair that Colliers Hill gets more? I don't know. And I'm not gonna say that, unfortunately politics is not always fair, and it's not always gonna be black and white. And we're not always gonna be able to say everything, the weight is even. And I'm not saying that Old Town should get special treatment. It's important to me, as right here in this room, the voice for Old Town. It's important to me that my neighbors and my community also feels like, hey, it's about time that people started realizing that Old Town can't just be, we want to bring you up to what we want it to be.
Okay, if Old Town turns out to be half of a district, and at some point we're gonna decide if we want district or ward, but do you think that would help with getting someone from Old Town elected?
Probably.
So that's where I'm coming from is, first of all, I'm not even sure we'd have to look into legal as to whether you're even allowed to have different sized wards if they're equally representative, because that's not, I don't know, that's constitutional.
Well, that's why I think they have to have
See, and that's-
roughly equal population.
Yes, that's what I thought.
And
So I
that's-
don't think we can even do it.
And that's the other reason why I'm conflicted. One person, one vote. If you do give special edges, and to also, what would be a really cool vibe is if we stopped looking at Old Town like the rest of Erie isn't Erie. or, that Old Town isn't here. Like, we are all in this together,
Right.
right? And
right,
I do think, like, because my general vibe of Old Town is, I love it. I love everybody there. I love the mixed buildings and trailers sitting next to houses, and I love everything about it. I really do. So,
I wouldn't change where I live for anything. And I don't want, again, I understand there's lots of reasons, and in a perfect world, I would always have my way, but I understand that there are rules and there are things required. All I'm asking is that we look logically and legally at it to try to at least be as fair as possible.
Right,
Yeah.
and so I think we're definitely going to make gerrymandering illegal. So it's not like, somebody could say, all right, let's put Old Town into
Yeah,
parts
no,
of
no,
Old
no,
Town
no,
in 3 different districts.
no,
And that
no,
would just be wrong.
yeah,
And so the reason I'm for districts is to give Old Town better representation.
The chance to be represented.
a chance to be represented.
Yes.
And so, I mean, if we keep like districts in general, like by age of construction, you're gonna end up with like maybe Old Town, Erie Village, and parts of Erie Commons together. And that would be grouped into one and likely have enough population to constitute one district, right? So we can put, I saw it in a couple of other charters where they had like general boundaries and that they would have to be redistricted, but those districts had like a purpose, right? So it was like, the purpose of District 1 is to ensure Old Town is represented and will include surrounding areas to maintain like Old Town as one voting block or something. And then you could end up with like splitting around it. And, when we get to redistricting, we can give goals to the redistricting process. Keep gerrymandering illegal is one of those goals, and maintaining equal representation would be another one, but also maintaining like representation of areas of common interest like Old Town would be another. And so I think we need to have a better population breakdown to figure if we wanted to define those words in the charter. But since they're going to be changing, some places actually did it every 5 years. I saw it wasn't necessarily every 10 years. Because the GIS data can be updated more often than once a census. Right. So we could do it every 5 years, because as we're growing, it's going to be faster than 10 years.
Yeah, that's possible. One of the things Kendra said is don't actually draw the boundaries in the charter, but then you have to change the charter to change the boundaries. But if you can give guidance on how communities of interest, that kind of term,
I like that.
and including that in the charter, then that gives the direction, excuse me, to the city council or town council when they adopt the ordinance that actually sets the boundaries or changes the boundaries.
So agreeing upon those goals is a good first start.
Like the general goals, yeah.
There were some charters that use the language like nearly rectangular or as close to, I don't think it said square, but rectangular as possible. So they were just being very algorithmic about it. I think like Longmont has all his neighborhoods on the sounds of it. But I wasn't sure if that's the provision that would be needed or if it would over constrain our goals. But that was a common thing across the handful of charters.
Going to Candace's point about splitting or not splitting neighborhoods. Because those two would be in conflict.
Yeah. Because that will happen just because of size of neighborhoods, I think. Vista Ridge is huge, but like, I mean, common interest, like the west side of Vista Ridge probably has a common interest with airport, right? They'll probably have some common interest in like south end of Vista Point, just due to proximity to the airport or to one of the trash mountains, or, things like that.
Let's see how far we
Never
get.
gets old.
Let's throw some goals on the board.
Okay, I would say,
What is the one that we agree on? At least the first one, the low hanging fruit. Equal representation, is that
Well, that's a requirement.
I think it's a requirement. I don't think we have a choice.
Roughly.
So it's a good
Well, but it's a good one to,
Yeah.
to give direction to the future
Yes,
districtors.
and communities of interest.
Yeah, group communities of interest as much as possible.
Okay. What else? Contiguous?
Contiguous.
Is that something that needs to be said?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was also one of the
You
requirements.
can't have pockets.
No,
that
I don't
is-
think it's required.
Yes, they have to be contiguous. You can have them connected by a non,
Okay, I think they should be contiguous either way.
yes. But like, I mean, contiguous also just means like, there could be a tiny strip down the center of Erie Parkway that connects two widely separated pockets, and that's contiguous. So I would say as uniform in shape as possible would be another one, just to make sure we
I'm
keep.
gonna throw everything up there and then we can pick it apart.
I don't know if that's the right phrasing.
Uniform in shape. So what if it was, a line here and a line here, this is thirds. Or, well, something, that's not, it might not be uniform in shape, because once you draw the line, then the Erie boundaries
Yeah.
don't make the same shape.
And not only that, some areas are denser than others.
So then I would say, how would you describe it then? Because I think the idea I'm going for is you don't have little offshoots to like grab like tiny bits and pieces of
Why
other.
don't we say no gerrymandering?
Well,
Golden has in theirs, it's 15%. You can't have one ward can't be larger than 15%.
How many councilors do they have?
3. No, not counting that, was 3 wards.
3 wards, okay.
Super.
but then it would be two per, so it would be, but it's 33%.
No, but
It's talking about
There's
population.
population wise.
Can't be,
and that's what I agree, we should make them as close as possible. It's never gonna be,
It's never gonna be exact.
so,
It's gonna change every day.
Yeah.
so
But once,
first,
once it gets to outside of that 15%, that triggers a redistricting.
that's an interesting way of doing it.
And Louisville, it's 5%.
5%.
Wow.
See, I mean, with the growth that we're having,
So
it'd be every other week.
So auto triggered redistricting.
Yes.
I was wondering if the Board of Adjustments couldn't be tasked with that.
do we
What
want
is the board?
They-
I don't, that's not,
That's
that's
a-
statutorily not their.
Yeah. Could it
not what
be?
they're- I don't, they're a statutory, I don't-
They're more for resolving disputes over
So-
interpretations of the municipal code.
I just-
I
zoning
was wondering, I mean,
issues.
it's a board that's not,
It doesn't meet very often.
that doesn't meet very often, that they be tasked with. a
I know, we
yearly
can't
review
even
of
find,
that.
we can't even find the members because they don't meet very much.
Adam,
And I think it'd be both greater than and less than.
Longmont is compact.
Hold on, where are we
That's a
at?
good one. The uniform in shape rather than that, maybe compact,
That's what Longmont says.
because that's kind of the idea I was going for. It's like not like off shot everywhere, gerrymander, basically not obviously gerrymander.
Like a regular shape, yeah, not a
And
Keep them. as
made up
close-
shape.
just Something,
And I think it's probably also not greater than X%, not less than Y%.
so population delta, I guess, would be.
Yeah,
not
whatever
greater
word
than
you
what's
use.
used, yeah. And I guess,
Compact as well,
compact, which one?
Louisville.
So that's a defined term that people have used. Okay. Representation community continuous, population delta not greater than X% or it triggers redistricting.
If we put this in group communities of interest, we need to define what that is. Is
I
it an
agree.
HOA? We need to, is like, that's probably one of the simplest metro district or HOA, but what else interests communities?
That's highly subjective.
Yeah.
And I mean, though, and that's the thing, those things change over time.
Yeah,
right? It's
I
not,
mean-
it's hard to define those.
Whoever's defining it will have their own interest inherently
Yeah.
involved. I mean, that's,
So maybe that would be part of that redistricting processes, like the group communities of interest to be defined by the redistricting commission.
We should try to offer some guidance. I mean,
Candace was right about, trying to, you split Vista Ridge, you just take this little corner out and you've kind of broken in the group interest because of Metro District or, if Vista Ridge Metro District or HOH.
It is.
It's both, I think, in Vista Ridge. So I think that should be considered. Neighborhood, what's the word I'm looking for? Neighborhood frameworks or neighborhood things that make it a neighborhood should make it included or excluded in its whole, as a whole. And that's where we kind of meet this. But I think there's other things in here that we want to talk about, which if you're doing the Old Town, Erie Village, and whatever's coming on over here, you kind of got like, and Northridge, yeah. So you have no HOA, you have no other thing that defines it other than, I don't know, it's called blue here.
So does anyone have any ideas on how you would give guidance that way through like?
Let's
without
just leave
being
it at
like-
large and then.
I keep thinking that, because if the church, they can always be amended.
Yeah.
The trouble with that large though is you'll never get anybody from Old Town.
Well, I think we owe it to the town to discuss this.
I totally agree.
Lisa's here we all talked about this in campaign.
Yes.
And I think we owe it to our community to at least attempt to get this in. I think the idea, Lisa, of a thing that gives Old Town a better chance at representation is good. I don't think we get away with saying Old Town is its own district.
Totally fine with that.
And that's one reason I had, until tonight, in my head, had one representative per district. Because that way the districts are smaller.
I'd
Right,
rather have
then-
multiple representatives in district and fewer districts.
I see both sides of the argument.
Or some towns do one representative in district and some at large.
Right, that's my preference.
Like
Is
a combination of both.
maybe like, again, talked about maybe 4 districts and 3 at large or something. But the smaller the district, the more chance someone would get a representative.
But you also limit the candidate pool in that district.
Yes,
It's
you
Yeah.
small.
You do. So again, like everything else, it's trade-offs.
So does anyone have any ideas on how we might give direction in a charter framework for community definition of the community of interest?
Is this in any charter that anyone has read thus far?
We're all going to say compact, continuous,
Yeah.
Did I just,
common population.
And most of them, like some of them did say like the specifics of districts would be set by ordinance.
yeah,
So like it just says, we're gonna have words, we'll let the council decide the words.
But
Yeah.
if the council is deciding words that, we could say no gerrymandering. So we need to make sure
we could
that's.
set, yeah,
well,
set
who
guidelines for
enforces
that.
that?
But yeah, who
Or-
enforces that?
Yeah, or you make not the council set the districts. Which
I would do an independent
council
commission.
and the group to do that, which is a thing.
And if you do it that way, how do you select them? Do you have an election for them? Do you have the council appoint them? And if the council appoints them, then you just get into the same.
Steve talked about districts.
Didn't,
Trying to read through
The
different
state of
ones.
Colorado, that does an independent redistricting for like the federal districts, right? Do we know how that works?
It went through, I was following it a little bit, but it was basically a planning commission makes a recommendation and people have a chance to comment on it, whether they have issues with it or not, or if there's like, if they think it's unfair for whatever reason. And then that goes to, it goes back to the commission to redraw again. And then I lost track of it there.
Well, do we have the population of each individual area? Because if we're gonna have to make them somewhat even, we kind of need to know that.
You can do census tracts, but they're a little goofy. It takes a lot to figure it out.
I mean, I feel like it'd be really pigeonholing to try to define any like wards or districts in the charter itself. I mean,
No, I agree.
I think that the combination of these words and the number of districts just I don't know if it's a pigeonhole, but it defines it enough, it prescribes the process enough.
No, I agree.
So, I mean, based on what we're seeing here, neighborhoods that are already in the pipeline, how many do you think we would need? Districts, district-wise?
Well, that gets to also how many council members.
Another one.
3 districts and 2 per.
And generally mayors at large in every one of them.
That makes
Yes,
sense.
there I think should be large.
Everyone can concur on that, then mayor at large.
Oh, absolutely.
Mayor at large.
You know, put that down as one of our decisions.
Stop and have a cookie, everybody.
So,
So if we want 6 council members, it would be 3 districts, and if we want 8, then it's 4 districts.
Or Brian's idea of 5 + 1.
well, have we decided that it's 1 per district? I'm not saying that's
I
wrong.
think I said, I
It's your
think I said
opinion.
that, yeah, 5 + 1 at large.
Yeah, I think that would go like, yeah, okay, so.
Right.
I think if we
So-
go with larger districts and multiple representatives, it'll make it harder to
Right.
include Old Town.
Agreed.
So if we do something like 5 districts, 1 at-large council member and then 1 at-large mayor, or even 5 and then 3 at-large council just to get a spread. And that way we'll hit the 9 councilors.
Yeah.
But
If we just like split down the middle and then group 3 of them that way,
because
that would be 6.
that'll be hard with future growth though, because a lot of the growth I'm seeing is off to the east side.
Then we'll have to eventually move the line over a little bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to move
Well,
the lines no matter what
Yes,
as we
yes.
expand.
But as Malcolm said, and Hillary pointed out, we don't want to define our lines in the
Yeah.
charter.
Right, we definitely
Right.
go to the charter. We say the number, like what Steamboat says, it says there'll be X number of districts, they say 3, boundaries of which determined by the council. So there are a few things in there. 1 is number of districts. 2 is, does the council determine the districts, or do we have a separate commission to determine the districts?
When we're, I just want clarifying, when we're saying the council, we're talking about like town council?
Yes.
Like-
Yeah.
The elected council.
So what benefits them to ensure that Old Town gets represented? It doesn't.
No, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Do we want the council or
No.
an independent?
No.
Group.
I think we want guidance and triggers like census or population delta that then cause something, but I don't think you give the council members the opportunity to draw it. They'll argue all day about that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So Steamboat says it's the council.
I don't like that.
Yeah,
I don't like it
agree.
either. I would prefer.
Are
to
we
be
in agreement on that? Yeah, we definitely don't want to. Okay.
Yeah.
We're just making all these moves, guys.
So that's 2 decisions.
Yeah.
So the next one.
Well, let me throw in.
All right.
Because if, then how do you either appoint or elect the commission?
Right.
And that becomes a different issue that you need. to
Then why don't we make it a function of the staff? The staff
Yeah,
has a
could be.
higher, no.
So she just said, please, can I tell them it would be more work for the clerk's office?
If you add a commission, it's more work for the clerk's office.
No,
I mean,
but
to-
the-
Right,
right,
what
well,
I'm saying, what
point.
about if it's,
Does anybody have
If
the
it's a
live
function
stream up?
of
Are there
your
any public comments?
To do
on
what?
that?
just to actually do the redistricting, no
Oh,
comments.
I don't think I'm gonna do
I-
that.
You said they hired someone out.
They hired a consultant to provide recommendations on it. I have seen both county commission, I've personally observed both county commissions and city council do the redistricting process. It's a give and take, it's a discussion, it's not insurmountable.
I'll bring my pitchfork.
And it's-
It is an open meeting.
subject to public involvement.
Yes, it would have to be. an open-
And they are the elected officials of the community. So
Okay.
presumably they.
Presumably,
So
Old Town will get its in the.
Because if you create a commission, it's gonna be long-term.
Yeah.
It's gonna be long-term.
Yeah.
Which means then you have another addition, I'm sorry, but into the clerk's office of managing that commission, just like we manage boards.
Yeah.
We're managing that commission as well.
Yeah.
And there's no way to just end that commission.
Well, and we already talked too about making provisions in this charter to start it on like not the current election cycle, like we're not trying to rush this in. Like, cause Andrew was really concerned about us, doing it in odd years or even years. Cause this is coming up.
We're talking about transition right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The transition, cause I mean, that's eventually that's what's going to make up the council is, people from.
What's the way to make it as objective as possible?
Well, in practice, what happens is the consultant looks at the maps where the population is, considers recommendations from the council on how to group things, where are the communities of interest. They draw up several sets of maps, options of maps, present those to the council, and the council debates the pros and cons of those and asks for some adjustments. They check the population to make sure it's equivalent, and then they decide. It's an iterative process, and it takes maybe a couple of meetings, but.
So it's a mix
it
of
works.
what I heard from Steamboat is the council draws the boundaries or defines it, but they don't really spend the time with the map doing it. They just get these options or recommendations.
Should we force the council to get that recommendation or not allow them?
I think we can force a third party to do the drawings, but I don't think we can say you must take their recommendations. I mean, they're the town council.
Yeah.
They can
Kick it back.
drag it out.
Line item modifications.
I'm worried we're starting to put too much into this. As we said at the beginning, we want to keep things as simple as possible. And if we say, here are the 14 different things you have to include, that's getting pretty specific.
Okay, well, what's the worst that's gonna happen if we do this? Like, how bad could it? What kind of situation could we get ourselves into? This is a town, it's not the nation, it's not the state, so there's only so many different ways you can slice this.
Right.
And
And by saying things like contiguous and equal representation, there's like, as you said, there's like so many ways you can slice and dice it.
I think one of the worst things that could happen is if you drew, one gigantic boulder and then a whole bunch of slices of weld or something like that. Like, I'm trying to think of.
But I don't think you could do that if population was equal.
Well, weld populations.
If weld grows, it would,
Yeah.
potentially.
Because like, we're
And-
already
and-
like twice.
And why would that then be bad?
Well, that's my
Right.
point is how bad is that scenario? Like we were saying earlier, people live in Erie to live in Erie, not just because it's
Right.
on the corner of Weld County or Bowl.
Yeah, I think the objective constraints that we setting those is. I feel like that's the best that we can do with still allowing our elected officials to. Change as we grow and be part of that process and.
And not be
just putting-
not be so restrictive that.
Yeah,
Right.
just objective, reasonable constraints to the process that. We feel like promote the town's interest. As a whole.
Okay, so then what are our thoughts on?
Yeah, has anyone seen like any other way that it's done in the other charters? I've seen it in the ordinance, I've seen it by like expressly said the council will decide using an objective process.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we are trying to add a little bit of subjectivity here. That is like the whole point of making sure Old Town gets its representation. So we're not wanting, like computer AI driven objectivity, right? We want some level of the grouping of common interest.
Is there any other clarity we could add to community of interest besides neighborhood boundary that would help or prevent some type of definition of a boundary that just doesn't make sense? Is against the spirit of what we're trying to do.
Somebody had mentioned age. The concern is over time,
It's
things are
getting,
gonna be
That's
rebuilt
gonna
and
skew.
stuff,
I mean,
so.
that's your oldest one. Yeah, that's 20 years old.
these two are approaching 20 years old. Or are over 20 years old. And then that's gonna be
Brand new.
brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you, you
So
can't
you
distinguish
can't-
that.
You can't, exactly.
And I'm not defending age, I'm just,
Yeah, no, totally.
No, no, no,
That was
yeah,
a thought
yeah.
that came across too.
and so
Agreed.
I think Bob and Lisa both kind of mentioned earlier by having a certain number of districts and keeping them, or at least enhancing the chance that someone from Old Town is gonna be represented. I feel like objectively, that's the minimum we can do, is to have enough districts instead of, if we're doing that, instead of being at large, and that they have a better chance.
Honestly, anything we do is gonna be better than, how many
Yeah.
people do we have on
Right.
our,
Yeah.
on our board
Exactly.
right now that are like from the same area?
so can we make a decision of one or two representatives per district?
Can I ask a potentially really dumb question?
No way.
I know. Can you have, in a district, can you have one person at large and one person elected?
Yes,
Yeah, everyone, you can have, if we have 3 at-large people, they could all be from the same district.
or they could be from any, well, that's what
We
we
just have
have
to
today.
have someone from that district represented. At-large can be anywhere else.
What if no one steps up from that district?
No, so I think what we're saying is that at large is anything. So districts guarantee of somebody in that district.
Right, but what if
What
nobody
if no one
steps up?
steps
from-
up?
Well, they should be
Then I
large
s-
enough that there's likely to have someone step up.
Yeah.
The 18 people stepped up for this. Like,
Yeah, sure, but we're from Vista Point.
all 3 of us, if we're gonna.
As I said, the current board has 2 from Colliers and 2 from
Yeah.
Flatiron Meadows
And 2 from Highlands.
and 2 from Highlands. That's,
So. What about?
I'm not worried about not
Yeah.
having enough representation unless we make these things so
Too
small.
If we had
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
districts or 8 districts, that's too small.
Yeah, thinking we can.
Louisville does it with 3.
right.
Everyone.
I
is
Maybe we
really
should
doing
do it
3
with
or 4.
3, 2 per district, 2 per district.
Could. Is it, we're saying, I'm just saying, that the number of districts is set by ordinance.
No, that's the point of having a whole new charter.
I feel like 3 is too small.
I
Too
mean,
few.
Like, yeah,
yeah,
I
to,
yeah,
to approach her point, I feel like,
that's
Yeah.
too small, because again, Old Town will get gobbled up
Yeah.
by
Well, then, okay,
the bigger.
How's 4
neighborhoods.
What about
4
4 and
or
then
5?
2 at large?
4 to a large and a mayor. Yep.
That's what Littleton does.
So if we were to draw 4 now, like where would we, like what general sizing would we see in the district? Do you guys have any idea? Like, based on population?
I have no idea.
You know what, I kind of go back to the community surveys.
Yeah,
We've-
maybe something like that.
because we've
I think
done-
it would cross county line road.
Yeah,
it's almost
We've done
diagonal.
the surveys, they did
X
quadrants.
marks the spot.
And
I think we'd have to come back with
Yeah.
information that shows roughly where things might line up.
Yeah.
If anyone's good at programming, the census has a very small chunks of data that you can pull out neighborhoods, and they have API stuff. So.
Was there
does anyone
GIS?
know art?
I was looking on our open data and I wasn't seeing anything like that.
So
There's a bit of mapping.
would 4
I don't know.
I think 5 is too many.
I think 4 is.
do 4,
I'll
1
Reasonable.
for each, 2 at large,
large.
and a mayor.
What if we approach it from,
We can
do
come
we
back
want
to this.
7? Is 7
We're gonna
the
have
number?
input on.
Well, yeah,
Right,
that's it.
right, right,
That's
right,
the
right.
question. Is it 7 or is it 9?
I
We
feel
have to
better
know.
about that
I
than,
think.
I feel better about that.
What was that?
I feel better about the
4,
4,
2, and 1.
yeah, 4, 2, 1. I feel
And
better
that keeps
about
us 7. I think,
I think 7's fine.
so
Yeah,
I think
Portland
nine
does
starts.
5.
I'm worried about 9 being too much.
Cleveland does
Yeah.
it with like 30, so.
Who?
Cleveland. I think Chicago does like 50.
Fort Collins has 6 districts and the mayor.
And they're a lot.
They're
They're 150,000.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
So maybe we can allow for the creation of additional, no, we can't. even do that.
No, let's just, because they can do it through an amendment 50 years from now.
Yeah, if we need to, we can amend
When
the,
we're
as long as we
dead.
have.
Yeah,
our-
We don't care
As long
anymore.
as our amended chart, like our charter amendment process is well defined. we can do that.
If this actually passes. And then they can amend it.
Okay, so,
I think whatever we decide tonight, we should probably read this.
oh yeah. no,
Oh, yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
So,
We're
Plus, we already
narrowing
stated we
in on
really want to hear the public.
3 or
have
4.
this.
Yeah, we. that's
And
what-
they're legal too, I think.
Yeah.
One thing
Probably
that, when we get to elections, I think it would be advantageous, which I can get into later, to
Do
have
we
more
already
than one
start?
representative per district.
So that we're gonna have a big public.
yeah,
If we did, so effectively 2 representatives per district, instead of making it 1 representative per district. Which would get rid of the at-large, and if we did 4 districts, we'd be at a council of 9.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion,
so,
that's what I gotta say.
okay, so that still leaves a space, though, if we pick the 4 districts, we can do that, like 1 rep per, 1 at large and a mayor. Or we can come back and decide, we want more representation and go for 2 per, no at large and a mayor.
Well, what does that look like on a ballot?
that would be right.
If I were voting and I was in whatever district I was in, does my ballot have
Yes.
all the other districts, or is it was printed for me in my district? So then what does Erie have to do to distribute a ballot like that?
That's a good point.
That'll be on your
The
offices.
counties do that.
The counties can break it up like that? Okay.
Would we have to keep our elections on even years in order to?
No, the county holds them every year
County.
because.
Well, it has to be November.
yeah, it would be
Yes, which
November.
we want anyways, but okay.
And I think, like,
So what,
didn't Boulder just moved to an even number year, so we wouldn't be on that. How would like a split between the 2 counties work then?
They all do,
They
both
all-
counties do.
Every year.
every year, yeah. There's always something.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've gone back and looked and there's been an election
Okay.
every November.
So even if we're off cycle from one county or the other, everyone will get a ballot from the county. And if we're coordinating with them, we can do it fine. And one of the research, there is a new bill for ranked choice voting, allowing ranked choice voting on coordinated elections. I did see that there was a state bill that allows that starting next year. Even if the county election is not ranked choice. Towns can add ranked choice questions for their residents.
This is
The
something. we
county,
have.
the county has to be able
To count it.
to count it.
Yeah.
And if they
there's-
don't,
Bill, he's saying.
There's a bill that takes effect next
What?
year, 2023.
I wouldn't think that they would have that in place in years time. To count
We
those,
can meet them when they do.
yeah. I mean, if that's what it says, that
It was
Because I know
HB
Boulder was-
21-1078.
Boulder County was working on it when I left Boulder. They were working on it because the city of Boulder wanted ranked choice voting.
So it
So
says that
Boulder County would probably be easy to, but Low County would be difficult.
Well, if it's a state,
But it's a state requirement that they be able to do it.
Yeah.
So that's probably a question for Hillary next time she's here.
Actually, Weld County's pretty easy to work with for our elections. They're easier than
They're
Boulder.
awesome.
Well, if they don't have the machines.
Well, if
If it's a state law, they'll have to.
They'll have to get it put together.
Okay.
I mean, if it goes into effect, they have to be ready for ballots next year. And sometimes they give them a little leeway and say, be up and running by this. It goes in effect next year, but be up and running by 2 years from now.
Okay.
That might be, but, because I know Boulder, the city of Boulder voted for ranked choice voting in Boulder, but the county wasn't going to be ready for them, I think, until next year.
it looks like it was signed last June to take effect in 2023.
So could we move forward with
Yeah,
just saying for districts or wards?
yeah, I don't know that we're on the 3 or the 4 yet. I don't know, I mean, unless we want to poll ourselves, where are we at with?
Well, let's first.
3 with 2, or
Right, forward.
3 with 2 representatives in each, or 4 with 1 in each, plus, what was it, 2
Two
at
at
large,
large.
plus, well, mayor's always.
The other option is you could do 1 at large and then have a non-voting mayor, and in the event that somebody leaves, you could move your mayor into a vote. That's, we're getting kind of complicated, but I'm just saying that's.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
okay,
I don't, my personal view is I think we should have a voting there.
I agree.
okay, so I guess then the proposal we have before us is for what number of districts? Do we want to go 3, 4, or 5? Does anyone want to go fewer or more than those?
No, I think 3 or 4 is good.
Does
That's what I'm
anyone
trying to
want,
write.
does anyone want 5? No.
No.
Okay. So 3 or 4, and the proposal would be 3 with 2 per, or 4 with 1 per and at large.
And
two
so
at
two
large.
at
To a
large.
large.
Okay, does anyone have any strong arguments one way or another?
Well, it also sounds like we're picking 7 for our council size.
I think to start with, yeah.
Yeah, I thought we had agreed to that, but then we didn't.
No, he had brought up a suggestion using, if we use 4, we can do 2 per,
Right,
and that'll get us to the,
yeah, and I thought we ended up, all right, maybe not.
yeah, we hadn't decided one way or the other on that, so, we can talk, wait, okay, number, let's, at 7 or 9? Anyone?
I think 7 is enough.
I think
7.
3, I think
7.
7.
Online seems to be working with 7.
Okay.
And they're.
I can imagine how long meetings will go. You have 9 people that have to
Oh my
call.
gosh, they already go so long.
Yeah, so
Just
we'll
saying,
go
we're
for 7,
always till 2 in the morning.
That's not fun.
so let's go with 7 counselors.
And so then it's either the 3 with 2 and the mayor or 4 with 1 and 2 at large.
Okay,
Do you just wanna do a poll?
Do you want to do a vote on this?
Just do both.
Yeah, or at
So-
least,
What,
Say
again,
what you
clarifying question, 4 districts with 1 each and 2 at large.
Right.
1 each.
In each, one representative in each district. This one is 2 representatives in each district. So, because we're trying to get to 6.
Mhm, mhm.
Ashley, you prefer to go first or last?
I would say I'm going to vote for 4 districts and 2 at large.
All right.
1 vote for 4. Who vote for 4? Who said, who wants 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'm just gonna put
5 and 1/2.
I don't want to.
and then everyone, people for 3, that's 1, 2, 3. So right now, that's our current split.
Then Lisa,
I don't know. I
I was gonna- I didn't know I had to agree. I was gonna support you.
There's a bigger chance. of we
Okay,
have.
so take me off of 3 and put me on 4.
no, I want to hear your thoughts, like.
I don't know.
That's why we're meeting every week. We got plenty of time right now.
Okay. I see the 4 districts does give a greater chance for, no, I think I'm on 4. I'm on 4. That's my final decision.
Adam, I want to hear your thoughts for 3 and 2, 3 and 2.
Well, I think that it will be easier to meet these goals with 3 than with 4. I think that our town is not large enough and won't be large enough to really end up with 4 effective districts. And as we grow in, that still dilutes your current intention of getting, the likelihood of an old town person like elected.
I'll make him.
You're
I'll
also-
make him run.
Well, you make them, that's a good idea. Now, that's how you get it. You run yourself,
That's
or,
exactly right.
the reason that they're not winning, I mean,
Town council.
when I ran, there was Mike and Ira.
Yeah.
And they didn't run a strong campaign. They weren't campaigners. They didn't have great arguments. It's the people that are winning these things. So put up, we're getting off track. I think that it's easier to meet these goals. I think it's easier to find a candidate pool in 3 than any kind of bickering or internal that might go when you try to get 1 with 4. You're going to have people vying for that 1 position where here you've got 2, so there's a little less at each other's throats within a district. Politics. All right, that's probably the bulk of my arguments here.
My thoughts on 3 versus 2, a ranked choice vote option or districts that I've looked into is called single transferable vote, which requires multiple people per district.
To be candidates or to run, or to be?
To be elected from a district. So effectively,
you vote for one person and then you vote for your second favorite. And then the way the math works, there's a fair amount of math behind it. You do elect the top two people.
But we're talking about doing an offsetting election, like this, they each have 4-year terms. We haven't got that yet. Like,
Yeah.
they have 4-year terms, we offset, you're only electing one person.
Yeah,
So that might take my own argument.
So you'd have to elect two people every single time. So you'd offset somewhere else. So that's my argument for two people in a district because of one of the options for ranked choice in the ward. That's really my only concern about it.
I mean, but the most popular form is instant runoff, which is just you rank your choices and.
Yeah, instant runoff is pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but for districting, it also helps prevent some gerrymandering action, but that's more on a state and country level scale.
Because to me, having two without offsetting terms sort of defeats the purpose of two in some ways.
Yeah, maybe that's the other thing is if you only have one in each district, which districts are gonna get elected in which year? Because someone's gonna sit through.
Right. We gotta pick that no matter what.
There's gonna be some rotation of when you're voting for what district.
Right.
Where here, you're voting for 3 districts, 1 representative per election. So it keeps, you don't have to have a district that's not voting, like the ballot that goes to Parkdale.
But they'd still be voting at large.
Of course, they're voting for the mayor, me.
And potentially the other two.
So they still have 3.
With
So
the
they-
at-large
You
representative.
either have
They
3.
still
Oh,
voting
here
for
with
3
two, okay,
people.
yeah, so Parkdale would, using it as an example, would have the ability to vote for whoever's at large that's open, but not their own representative, because that person.
Right. So they're voting for 3 instead of 4. In 2 of the districts.
Debbie, you had a thought?
I wasn't really sure where you're going with that, so, but I was just gonna say, in your first year, you would probably, the first election would be, if you did the 2 per district, it would be, one would be a 4-year term, the other would be a 2-year term.
Mhm.
And that was how you would offset them to begin with. I didn't know if that wasn't.
No,
That wasn't where you were going.
No, but that's
No,
good,
but it's
when we get to
important.
transition, we'll have that type of.
Yeah.
consideration.
So is
And we're
there,
gonna have-
what's the advantage of offsetting as opposed to,
You get seasoned council members to work with people who may be new to working on council, so that there's sort of that
well,
history there as well.
I guess if we offset, so one district votes, or you vote for them for 2 years, but the other district doesn't vote. So you still have those seasoned counselors.
Yeah, I think she was just talking about, you wouldn't want to elect a whole new council every time.
Right, yeah, and I don't think I want to do that, but
Right.
if you're not taking out, I guess there would be some back and forth with the 3.
There's really no point, at no point are you electing 2 people in a single district, I guess that's first one, right?
Yeah.
The very first one, but your point of the ranked choice voting system that gets 2 people doesn't really work
With this.
in normal operations.
Okay.
So with 2 in a district, you always get to vote for someone.
Yeah.
And that's a positive thing for the elections.
I do, my last comment, I still like the 3 versus 2, and we'll get to how they're elected eventually. But
3, what do you mean?
versus-
Three
Not
districts
at large.
3 versus
3 with
4.
2, 3 with 2
3 with
instead
2.
of 4.
Yeah, I'm still happy with my 3 vote.
Yeah.
I foresee we're gonna come back to this at some point. But I think the big decision that we have made is that we do want districts.
Yeah.
We do want to start with a council of 7. And for now, the consensus of the commission is that we'll do 4 districts with 1 each, 2 at large and mayor at large.
Mhm.
We can revisit, and I think we will. I think we should.
We'll have to.
And we want to hear public comment as well about this. There's trade-offs on both.
Because you're actually convincing me 3 with 2 each with offsetting terms is better.
Yeah, but what Malcolm said about you getting to vote every year, every election.
Right. You're.
Yeah, because then there's no confusion.
I'm starting to lean
Ask
towards
people
that.
I know, like this.
Because
Yeah, why don't
we're
we-
talking about the potentially a 4-year term. We haven't decided that. I'm not going there right now. But
That's on the list.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think I picked 4 in support of Lisa in, having smaller districts, but Adam, I know you did say earlier, I mean, if there are 2 from each district, then you have even more people, so Old Town would still have a chance at 1 of 2 spots instead of 1 of 1 in that larger district, and I do like that you're getting to vote for somebody from your district every time. I think that's good for engagement, sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
But-
I started looking at you. Could you change my vote to 3?
Might as well. Please.
I think, I think we're gonna need to sleep on this a little bit, get some public comment. In the end, it may end up being something like this, and this may not be the only thing that's in the charter that we end up in a split like that on. I'm not surprised it happens. But we all get a chance to make our arguments, and if we get to think about it, at least we're not having to make these decisions like Andrew and I had to, and now Andrew has to, like now at the board meetings.
Okay, so we will stick with that in our wrap up for now, is that we are fairly well split on the number of districts, and
I think we're split because of the Old Town representation. That's what it comes, that's really what it comes down
Like what
to. Because
gives
I could
the
go
opportunity.
either way, that is basically support for Old Town.
My only concern with doing 3 districts is I'm afraid Old Town will get swallowed up.
Yeah.
That's my fear.
How many people from Old Town, and I don't know the answer to this, it's really a question. How many people from Old Town have run? Do we get people who are willing to run?
Yeah, not a lot. There really isn't.
So,
It would take a push. I think it would take a push and encouraging people to say, hey, we want to have a voice. That means that we have to actually start showing up.
right, and so that's,
It's going to change. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I know that it's going to take some shifts, some paradigm shifts, for Old Town residents to get them to be like, okay, we got to start putting our money where our mouth is, and we need to start acting on the things we say we want.
Yeah, well, and the other thing to consider too is people in Old Town bought their houses when they were much more affordable. A lot more of them are blue collar workers who are always working. Their
So-
availability looks a little different too.
That's where we start getting into like compensation for people who run, things like that.
Legit,
Need to open that candidate pool up a little bit.
but that's not gonna be on the charter, I don't
Yeah.
think, right?
No, you can't set it.
well, no,
You
some people have set the amount.
You can set compensation. I
Yes.
thought,
So
We were
set
gonna keep it
compensation.
simple so
Kinda
this
get the
thing
charter.
actually passes.
I mean, it's not about it. You could start an initial and then they have some kind of escalation clause.
Inflation.
I think that's what we discussed in the first one.
Pitch than what I've read.
Yeah, because
All right, so we're still split on this. I think we agree we need to hear from the public a little bit. We need to sleep on this as far as the breakdown of the
Am
districts.
I allowed? Can I take a picture of that? Is that
Yeah,
allowed?
This is an open meeting. Where's the camera?
It's over there. I'm conveniently off of it for most of the time.
So,
He's trying to get it.
it's in
Yeah.
here. It's in the light.
Okay. So.
Well, I'll show you.
That's a big one.
Well, would it be helpful to see this GIS data, like see a map of a divided by 3 map and a divided by 4 map?
I could make one. Oh, I don't, should I volunteer? I'm not an expert. I'm on the, maybe I should. I went to.
Is this something we should ask for?
Yeah.
Or is it something we amateur?
I'm definitely an
Can,
amateur. I would
Well,
like
can
to
I
see-
say that that's part of your role as a commissioner is if you want to do that.
I
you
can,
do
I
that.
can generate.
Can the town do
If
it?
she can ask you, she can ask us, the
No,
town
I
staff
mean,
do?
if she wants to, I mean, Bob has done his research and shared it with the group. I mean, she can.
Well, and you can't cheat GIS data, right? Like literally the data I'd gather would be from the Census Bureau and I could
yeah, so
do some.
If you
some
meet these
numbers
goals,
to give you, some information is, in 2020, Erie was 19.74 square miles. And the population average per square mile was 1,522 people.
In 2020.
Yeah, so that's just.
So that's the census data we beat.
Right. But that's an average. It doesn't say, and this is the census.
What does that mean?
That doesn't give us a lot of
That's-
ideas, because we need,
No,
we
we
need
need
to
by, I know. But it just says by average.
right,
it
but
would
like
be
the census
7.
would publish like more
Yeah, no,
minute data.
I know,
And if
this is,
Sarah wants to volunteer
yeah, this
to
is.
get us.
Can you retract your volunteer?
Is there anyone else who can do GIS mapping in this skill set here?
I just got done doing a semester of it this summer and got a 4.0. That's my extent. I've never professionally.
The other option is to ask staff to do it and see if they're able to do that.
I mean, we can ask our GIS department, we can pull the data, we can ask Jesse to pull the data from this. It's from the census.
Yeah,
and
you just pull it.
It's not, we can't base it on house.
Right.
It needs to be on
like a-
population.
Yes.
There's a difference between the number of houses and population.
Like a census block, right? Is that what it's?
But
What is
you
the-
can filter out by age demographics and stuff. So like you can't go right down to,
But
can you go
it's
down to
not-
voters with the census data?
It's not supposed to be the number of voters.
Just
It's
by
Population
So
period.
It's not by age or the number of registered voters.
Yeah,
Well, that's-
okay.
So.
That sounds pretty equitable, right?
I mean,
I think
That's where you
the
start.
law, According to.
Well,
Kendra,
that's
it was by
interesting because I
population.
know Steamboat says the number of qualified electors.
Why do only electors?
qualified electors doesn't mean you're registered to vote.
Yeah,
That just means you're 18 or older.
right.
Yeah.
And the
Yes.
citizen.
And a US
Yeah.
citizen and no felonies.
But it doesn't include kids. I thought you were saying
Well,
general
the census
population.
is all population, right?
But the Census Bureau also has, it's broken down by age.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is by the GS.
I'll explore it
There's
further
only
with
one-
Kendra. She said it was by population. and
Okay.
that's-
So
I think if I remember correctly, you can, well, because like I just got done doing a map for my final. And the stuff that I produced on my map was like literally down to income, age bracket.
Yes.
You could do it by race if you want, all
It
that's
has all of
covered.
that. And in fact, Erie has all of that already.
Yeah,
done.
but is
Like,
it
they
mapped
don't
out?
have-
It's
there's-
just broken down. You're not throwing it on a map. That's the
There's only-
skill set is taking that data and putting it on a map.
and so
Well, getting that raw data.
Yes.
Because right now
Sarah,
there's only
would you
one
be able
code.
to work with the town to try to get this?
I mean, if I'm allowed to, and I'd love that opportunity.
Definitely.
I'm gonna say, I'm
Just so I
gonna
don't
ask
mess it
Sarah
up.
to look some of that, work with the town, because you're the one who knows most about how to represent this data for us. You've got a month till our next meeting, right? No.
3 weeks.
2 weeks.
3 weeks.
So we've got 2 weeks off, so 3 weeks till our next meeting
It's enough time.
during the vacation.
I'll hit 'em up on Christmas Eve, right?
So Sarah, work with the
You
town.
know,
I'll send you guys an email.
I'll send you
Yeah,
an
that'd be
email or
great.
I'll-
Okay. Are we,
I
okay,
think it's a good starting point. I think
Keep in
that
mind.
a decision of this
Legit.
magnitude may require some more.
Yeah.
Skilled GIS,
Yeah.
professionals who draw this out for us and help us make the decision. Because I'm worried about, pushback on, well, what is Sarah's qualifications to draw this, and you guys made a decision
Yeah.
based on that,
No, I'm all about his
I
point.
think it's a good starting point, like it would give us an idea on whether, if we look at 3, right, and we look at the population breakdowns, like, oh, this is gonna be weird districts that have like,
Well,
It
the
makes no
goal,
sense.
the goal was to make sure that Old Town gets a better shot at that, and that's what I heard from a lot of people. And if 4 districts does, it's still almost as diluted as with 3,
Right.
then maybe that changes
Yeah.
our opinion.
So yeah, we'll take a look at whatever data is generated, and if we need more data, we can request expert input on all of that.
Guys, do you guys have any more copies of this, like printed out?
Yes.
There's one there and there's one right back there.
Cause she just take.
Can I just have it? Thanks.
Okay, the goals as listed on the board for our districts, are we in agreement on that? So I have equal representation, contiguous compact, have a population delta of some percent that we can decide once we have better ideas on how the districts would look. An automated retriggering of redistricting if population grows too far out of bounds. It's fine. And then I think the community of interest was the big one that, I think that one is a question we should pose to Hillary on how we might represent that legally without having it be,
Well, anything other than just neighborhood boundary.
like, how do we define them in some ways? That's enforceable, legal and enforceable for future redistricting efforts. I think that's what will matter. So that'll be another question for Hillary. How do we represent that? Did anyone have anything else, or are we good with those sets of goals? Okay. Then let's move on to answer the question number of members. Do we want to decide?
Can we decide the word?
Yes. I'm gonna propose districts. I like that.
I like district.
So,
Ward
Ward
sounds like
feels a
jail.
little- prison, yeah.
My dad likes to call himself a ward of the state, which I don't think is a good thing.
So,
And then there's Ward Colorado.
So it seems pretty unanimous that we'll call ourselves districts.
Okay.
So that's another decision. Right. Okay. Let's see. Mayor, yes, we've agreed that we want a mayor at large.
Yeah, and so that gets to the table of contents area because, oh, never mind, it says table, never mind. It says town council in there, sorry.
All right, so then I think going back to the draft outline that Hillary sent out, we've answered, that was 301 section 2 that we just discussed. The next section is going to be terms and overlapping. I think while we were discussing, it seemed a pretty common consensus that it's best to overlap, not have everyone elected every election or every 4 years or whatever. So we do want overlapping terms. Do we want terms for all positions to be 4 years? Because I believe right now it's mayor 2 years and the trustees are 4
Yeah, I
years.
feel strongly the mission before you.
That's fine. 4 years for everyone.
2
Okay.
years is-
I don't think you can get enough work done in 2 years.
Agreed.
And we'll just deal in the transition period without starting a stagger.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think the way that the Eagle Charter has it laid out with like requiring 2-year term or 4 years, except where 2-year terms are required to
initialize.
to
Or
initialize
or to
to
fill out.
recover,
Yeah.
to recover.
I think, yeah, that also gets into, I think the way they wrote it builds out into vacancies somewhat.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I'm guessing that's why they worded it that way, not just for the transition.
Yeah, it's to help fill vacancies, because like, yeah, there was issues with like if someone becomes vacant, if a position becomes vacant, that person has to be filled. But they just go to they don't finish their term.
Yeah.
They just get to the end of to the next regular election. And then it gets, you have to refill staggered, you have to restagger everything, so. I think that's why that terminology was in there as well. Okay, so let's see, what was the next section then? So do we like how that number 301(3) is written out?
Yes.
Because that kind of covers a bunch of different scenarios and situations on how you make decisions on who gets elected. That might have to be tweaked a little bit because we are doing districts. And I think that section is written specifically for at large, where anyone who needs to be voted for, like you just rank the candidates based on their vote numbers to which, who gets to do the 2.
Yeah, it'll depend if we do 2 or 3 though, because if we do 3, then theoretically, the person who gets the more votes in that would be the 4-year term, and the person who gets less votes would be a 2-year term.
Right, and if we do 4 with 1 each, then especially for the first transition period, we're gonna have to define like,
You only get 2.
yeah.
Which
who gets-
district, and that,
Yeah, and we could do it by vote votes on that. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
because there's some,
well, I'm not sure about that.
that might be issue
That is
because of,
only the
I don't
districts that
think,
vote.
yeah,
and the district sizes might be slightly different, which
Right.
gives some districts an advantage, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
that'll
it'll
be-
even out. I mean, eventually, it's just that first transition
So
year.
maybe just like a little asterisk next to that, so we come back to that.
Yeah, we have to come back to it because we
Yeah.
haven't decided that yet, so.
Okay.
Wait, Asher, 301(3) is what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've not made.
The mayor.
On the
working
draft?
Yes.
Yes.
Got a lot of provisions to get through.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're not gonna do it today.
It's
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, Article 3 working draft, that's what I'm looking at. not the running draft, that's a different. Okay,
That's
So-
old news.
we need to go back on that. Number 4, do we want term limits and 2 consecutive term limits? Anyone feel strongly one way or the
I
other?
think-
want term.
I think so, yeah.
I know one of the other charters, I think it was like Silt, did 3 terms.
Yeah.
It was
Two
just-
is
I
good.
think 2 is good.
Years.
Especially if they're 4-year terms.
Yeah.
then 2
Yeah. That's
terms
8
is plenty.
years.
Plus
Almost
they, plus they
8.
come back in 2 years, can't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, and they could be like, go from council to a mayor and
Yeah.
be there for a long time.
We could prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad, I mean, I think I would be fine with someone who made it 8 years as a counselor, 8 years as a mayor.
For life.
I mean, they got, if they got themselves elected that many times, maybe that's what
they get to
the
go into
situation was.
The book of, yeah, Walgreens,
Mhm.
history of Erie.
And they-
I see no problem with that, but I do think that we should keep it at 2 consecutive terms.
Oh, and it's interesting, I hadn't thought about this before, sorry for going back. If we do the 4 districts with 1 each and some at large, do you declare if you're running for, you have to
Yeah.
declare if you're running for
you have
district?
to declare for an office.
Yeah.
Otherwise you wouldn't be on the ballot on the right place.
Right, yeah.
But then what if you move?
Into
inside?
another district.
Well, that's something we should say for districts is,
There are
there was an assumption
stipulations.
that there's a residence
Yeah,
required.
I mean, just,
1 year within the district.
just as right now, if we have somebody moves out of town, what happens?
They don't get to sit on the board.
Right,
yeah.
so same thing, you have to stay within your ward.
And if you.
If you were
Well, what-
elected, not.
But what about the consecutive thing? Like, you
Yeah.
did 2 years consecutive as counselor in this district, and then you moved across the street. And now
I
you're
think we
doing-
just-
I think we
that's-
need to put wording to limit that.
Yeah,
so
that's
No, I
like,
think
you
we
know,
should leave it like it is.
Yeah, because it doesn't
doesn't matter.
specify, it doesn't break down. by
It says
district.
mayor, okay,
Yeah.
it doesn't say
Okay.
district representative, it says mayor or council member.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And it
don't
doesn't-
forget, we had somebody who, ran for the state, who lied about the residencies last time.
Hmm. Oh, and the consecutive terms is like 4.
Yeah.
This one, like,
She's probably gonna be going to jail for a while.
Okay, let's just not do
Orange is not.
Get
your
caught.
color.
I like that.
so terms are considered consecutive unless they're at least 4 years apart. That's a definition that.
Or do you want me,
Huh?
do we want to
Why,
limit it for life, or do we want to?
well,
I don't want to limit
So
it.
I
but
can
why do you
tell,
think-
I can tell you
You
by
want
the
it before
historical
election?
records we have, that has happened in the past where they've been a mayor for their term and then they are not for a few years and then they're back.
Yeah.
So even though they've hit their term limit, they are off for a couple of years and then they come back and they're
I
mayor
don't-
again.
I'm okay with that if they're getting elected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just giving a chance for someone else that they're
Yeah.
not just monopolizing and they have the incumbent advantage for
So
life. It's
Do we do presidential, you get 2 terms as mayor?
2 terms
Is that-
for life and you're done?
You're shaking your head. Amy?
Yeah, you're president, you can't, they can only do 2 terms.
Yeah, I'm just saying, do we
Right.
do that here?
Also, currently, it's consecutive terms as a council member, mayor does not count as that.
Correct.
So just,
So you should be on the board for 16 years.
Mhm.
You're like,
And then Ash asked whether he wanted to change the 2 years to 4 years, which means because of the staggered elections, we could do it as 2.
Yeah.
And that's why it's, well, I'm assuming that's why it's at 2 now.
So the note that Hillary has on the side is that if we don't put any wording on term limits in the charter, it defaults to statutory, which is consecutive means 4 years apart. So if we want to, so 2 years is actually a reduction from statutory. So as it's written, where it's at number 5, where it says terms shall be considered consecutive, shall not be considered consecutive if they're at least 2 years apart. That's a reduction from the statutory limit of 4 years apart to be considered consecutive.
I
Well,
like, I like the 4 years.
I like the idea of 4 years.
It's that pink comment on the side.
Yeah,
Like if
I'm reading
someone-
no, but I'm reading which comment says what Ash is saying, because I'm reading it differently.
HMG 1.
Yeah,
Yeah, it says no more than 2 consecutive 4-year terms or 3 consecutive 2-year terms.
So and then right below that, terms are considered consecutive unless they're at least 4 years apart. So
Okay,
she's
that's
saying,
out. She
yeah,
had the number on
she's
that
saying that
second
that's the
part.
statute.
I was looking for the number. I was looking for consistency, sorry.
So yeah, so the 2 years is a reduction. And that's written in the charter. If we leave a term like consecutive, a definition of consecutive out, then it would default to 4 years.
So if we struck out item 5, it would be 4 years,
Yes,
is the definition of consecutive term.
right, but I think we want to leave, I guess, the definition of whether an appointment counts as a term.
Yeah, okay. That's probably fair.
So do we just want to amend 5 so that it says 4 years apart for consecutive terms?
Yes.
Yes.
And it says, or for separate offices, which allows you to do the 16 years as council and mayor. Sure.
Yes,
So that, we want to leave that in?
yes.
Okay. Anyone else? That's what the consensus is? Leave that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave that, we'll change that back to the 4 years. 4 years apart for consecutive.
Could they go back after being mayor to another 4 years on council?
If they can do 4 years council, then 8 years in mayor and then 4 years back on the council, because they're non-consecutive.
No, you're asking.
Could they do
Eight,
8 on
eight,
council,
yeah, they could
8
be
on, 8, 8, 8?
Yeah, because you want to put a hard term on it? That's what it
Or do you
sounds
want
like.
to consider it? Do you want to, can we consider mayor and council as like both for the term? limits?
No, because your pool of mayors usually is your
Is
council.
your council, and that's good, we want that, because we're getting experience, right, we're getting people that know what the heck they're doing, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I am a little concerned about what you're saying, and I do sort of think that we need to put a hard stop
So
on it.
no more than 8 consecutive years combined of mayor and council.
I mean, that's your life term.
Yeah.
No.
No, then you can take
16.
4 years off and then go back again.
Then
Like that,
are we
even if you
allowed to do
loved
that?
doing 16 years before, and you took 4 years off, and you really loved it.
I,
I don't know.
if you could get the vote.
Isn't that what's kind of in most of these example charters we're looking at, is that possibility exists?
Yeah,
I'm okay either way.
it seems to be a pretty,
Standpoint.
standard at least, and I mean, I don't know if there's any places where that's really an issue.
I don't think the reality of that is likely. It's just, I don't see it being excluded anywhere.
It's not specific, like none of the charters I've read have said anything about like lifetime term limits or anything like that. It's just been a possibility that you could basically jump back and forth between council and mayor for the rest of your life. For the- what is it?
Sorry, man, that just sounds.
If you get the election, if you get voted in.
I mean, that's $600 a month.
You live
It's a big draw. Okay,
I'll be
so
able to pay your election expenses, so.
I think we're kind of in consensus that we will leave it as is. I guess for the purposes of this limitation, terms to which an individual is appointed shall not count as a term. We're good with that as well.
Nomination requirement, don't we need a requirement?
Yes, so this is where, because this was something we had discussed a lot last meeting, and so she gave us our options there in the comment.
Yes.
So statutory default is 10 signatures or 10 per district.
I think 10 is such a tiny number.
Yeah, I think 25 is tiny.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think a lot of this is gonna depend on what numbers we get back when we look at our wards too.
I
I mean,
mean,
if it's an at-large position, they should have to have
Yeah.
more signatures than people in a district.
Longmont does 50 signatures at large and 25 per award.
I think that's
I think that's
totally
reasonable.
appropriate.
Yes, no.
I think
25
any-
is still
I think-
low, though.
I think 100 is a lot. I don't think
100
it's
is
100. That bar is really high.
Debbie, what is your experience with processing these petitions? Like, what do you think is a reasonable number for your office to process?
She did-
That puts more than the statutory.
So when I worked in Boulder, it was, I believe it was 25. And that wasn't that big a deal to check. 25, but we had help from other staff, just, it wasn't just the town clerk's office. So we had an election person, she was awesome at getting staff to help, and we did a lot of that after hours on weekend or on weekends. She couldn't get it done during the week, so, but it wasn't a big deal.
You just processed 18 people who had at least 25 signatures each for this commission. What was that like?
It wasn't bad, wasn't bad. And, but we didn't check verify signatures. So I don't know who would be verifying signatures for council. So we didn't verify signatures for your seat, we just verified addresses and names. So.
And make sure.
Now
you
she
didn't-
tells us.
And make sure you didn't have duplicates. We had to make sure that, you know, if you turned in, like, we had people that turned in 2 sets. So 50, we had one that turned in 3. So there were 75 to check.
And to make sure the signatures, like you can only sign the number of
Sign
petitions for
9.
the number of
Right.
open spots. So,
Right.
which for 9, it was harder.
That was harder.
So you had to keep a running tally.
We had,
Each
and I did.
person signed one.
Oh,
Right,
interesting.
exactly.
And say,
Yeah,
okay, this person has appeared on 4.
This, yep,
right.
they sign on
Exactly.
this one, this one, this one.
And you kind of have to do the same thing for, you
Okay.
know, all throughout.
Well,
So
So 25 wasn't
wasn't bad.
burdensome, it had to happen,
Yeah.
was workable.
And with 18 candidates, 25 each, that kind of plays into that. So in our town elections, we typically have what?
4. Well, you got 4 people who are being elected.
Four.
Right now, you got mayor and 3 trustees.
Right.
And
And how many can we have?
if you did that 25 each, that's still way less than she just ran for.
Yeah,
I would think 50 for the at large.
Well, it depends on the number of
of
people that
candidates.
run,
That can't, yeah,
the number of
candidates.
candidates.
How many candidates do we do?
Right.
Well, okay.
And
that's-
you can turn in way more than the needed amount, because you're always encouraged to get more than you need.
Well, just to surmount so you don't have to go back and redo this again within the timeline that you're given, right? So like if you called me and said, hey, you only got 24, I gotta go get
You gotta go.
at least 1 more.
I think you have to start over.
Oh, really?
you have to resubmit the packet.
You have to resubmit the packet from the meeting to start over.
Okay. And the timeline is still the timeline. Like you have to have all
Exactly.
packets in by X day.
By X day, and I have to have them verified. I think it's 3 days after is what it is right now, I think. And when you talk initiatives and those sort of things, that's a whole different thing, because it was 2,500, 33 signatures is what we had to verify for those. And that was a little more. There was a lot of people helping with those, but for these sort of offices, 25 isn't bad. I don't think.
Yeah, I would say 25 and 50, like you said, would be doable.
Just even for a large, well, that's what
No,
we have
50.
today. everything's large.
50 at large.
50 at
I think she
large
just suggested
and
50 at large,
25.
25
So we
for
could,
the
okay, that would be my preference.
I like it to be higher. Higher like 25, higher than 10 right now. And then Hillary's comment that statutory city, I think that's what she's trying to say, which is a thing, is 25 signatures or 25 per ward. So we're following along with state guidance here and adding a little bit for mayor
And at large,
And potentially.
if we do at large.
or at large. Yes, good point.
Our mayor will always be at large.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
our
yeah,
mayor would always
agreed.
be at 50.
But
And I think
it's whether
that's-
we have the 2 at large.
Yeah.
I think that's a good
I think that. yeah.
bar to put, just so it's not burdensome on town staff, but it still has a higher.
You still can't do it with your poker buddies, so.
That's how popular you are.
I was gonna say.
Well, not that I'm in a hurry to get out of here, but I figured I'd do a 15-minute warning for 2 hours of it.
Oh, right.
Last time we
Almost
ended up
8:30.
rushing last time.
So, okay, I'm just gonna mark those down as our decisions here for our nomination requirements then. So 25-6 for district candidates and 50 for at-large. Whether that includes any counselors, we'll decide later.
So talking about timing,
Sorry.
if we don't
Long
get
ways.
through this, that puts us behind our schedule, which I think we may have like an extra week available.
Well, I think
So some of these nights may turn long.
Yeah,
I'm okay to stay later tonight. I have, my husband's at home. I don't have a babysitter tonight, so. I know that I was an issue. with that, so.
in Canada, I think we may have more articles than we just.
yeah, we may have to add some, so.
But we have plenty of weeks left over, so
We don't have many.
we don't.
We don't have many
No,
gaps.
I need to schedule my schedule.
Yeah. So let's keep working through this, because I think we are making good progress here, and we'll see, we may extend a little bit just to make sure we actually get some good decision and discussion happening.
I want to go back a little bit. I'm not sure if this is the exact place to talk about it, but I want to talk about if you are a counselor and you run for mayor, should you have to give up your seat as a council member
To run.
if you lose?
No, it talks about that in here.
Does it?
Yeah, she has it somewhere.
I thought that was only if you win. I want to talk about if you lose.
I thought it said that you keep your spot.
I think usually that is the case. I want to, from experience, the person who lost the mayor race but is still a voting member of the council can sometimes cause quite a bit of difficulty on the council.
Sour grapes. Essentially.
There's just been a huge campaign. There's some acrimony between the group, and someone may have, just a chip on their shoulder.
I think it's 3032. I'll get somewhere under there, I think.
Yes.
Person may be a candidate for office of mayor while serving as a council member, and if not elected mayor, they serve out their term as council member. So you're saying that if they run after the election
And they're
no longer a council member.
they still have time on their seat as a council member.
So you're saying.
They'd have
if
2
you're
more
running for
years,
mayor-
essentially.
Sure.
In essence, you're saying if you're running for mayor, you're resigning from the council as of the next election.
If you don't win.
If you don't.
No, even if you do it.
You're not a
Either
council
way,
member, you're
yeah.
mayor.
Either way,
It's
yeah, I guess, I want to put it out there. I want to say from experience that it caused difficulty both times that I ran into that.
So how do you feel this time?
Well, it would just, right now it was all at large, so it was just the next highest vote getter would get that seat. You gave up your seat, so now we're electing
So
4 trustees and a mayor.
it would be like resigning, essentially.
Well, in essence, you're saying if you're running for mayor, then you're gonna have somebody else running for that council seat
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
during that election,
Yeah.
so it's not.
yeah, you're opening
So it
the
would
seat.
be, yes.
Gosh, I see what you're saying, but I'm a little conflicted because then it screws up the entire thing, like moving forward.
No, they would run for a 2-year term.
They would have a 2-year term.
Well, it depends on.
He'd be filling out
Yeah.
that, yeah, he'd be filling out that
So it'd be
term, and
no
then he'd
different
go
than
for
just a
3.
regular vacancy.
Yeah.
Right.
And as long as we have a robust vacancy filling process, that shouldn't be an issue.
Yes, it'd be a 2-year term, because otherwise.
I think
they're up
that
anyway.
if you have aspirations of being mayor, run your term and then go run for mayor. But when you jump out of your term 2 years early to run, and then you lose, and you've only been on the seat for 2 years, you're gonna cause problems.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
I can respect that.
I want us to consider it.
Let's get there.
Okay,
'Cause it-
sorry,
it
I
is
thought
on
that was-
here,
that's
It
why
is
it's-
on here, and so we will get there, but let's try to stay
Yeah.
in order if possible, just so that we
For
can
sure.
stay where I don't mean to,
So,
but I do think we
that's-
should discuss it.
3.3, section 2, subsection B.
Yeah.
Is where we'll get to that.
Okay, thanks.
That's where it is. Okay, so we've talked, this was an out of order section for the districting. Any of the other words in that section, does anyone have any,
I'm sorry, which one do you want now?
sorry, under after nomination requirement, there's that monument, town council and mayor section. So that's kind of out of order. That's referring back to number 2.
Mhm.
Right.
But the wording in there is important. I think we're not going to set the wards or district boundaries in the charter. I think we're good with that. But how do changes in the boundaries of districts may be made by ordinance to maintain similar population apportionment? Changes shall be effective for purposes of our regular special municipal elections or approving changes in effective at least 180 days prior to any such election.
Don't change the boundaries and then have an election.
Yeah.
Right away.
So it gives buffer.
That would be where the trigger would be put.
Right, I think that's where those things come
That's
into
where,
play, yes.
yeah, that's the
So-
golden.
So I think, right in here, when we
There.
talk about the districts, the district sizing, we'd say districts will be set by ordinance, keeping in mind these goals.
Yeah.
Yes,
So changes of that, yeah, the districts may be made by ordinance to
Yeah.
maintain this, and this.
Right. And we are still gonna ask about the legality of our last community of interest wording. Sorry,
no, go ahead. I thought you were starting into 3.
territory, let's see, I think we're good, that with the time frame 180 days.
I know
Me
some
too.
are-
No, but I don't, do you really think that, well, depending how big the territory is, but I don't think it's, see us annexing anything big enough that would create.
Wait, you're on number 3.
I thought that's.
We're still on number
We're
2.
still on.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
trying to
yeah,
add for the effective date, 180 days, that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
I know
enough.
what you're
time,
I
yes.
think that's fine.
Okay. Sorry, now Bob, go ahead, number 3.
I just. Do we want to say we may resolve the creation of a new district?
Oh, so you want to add that option?
No, it's
No,
in
that's
here.
what's in
I'm
this
saying
one.
take it off.
Territory shall become part of one of the districts or may result in creation of a new district.
So we want to remove that.
I don't think,
I don't think the ordinance should set districts. Or,
I think you have to change the charter to change the district.
yeah,
right, so.
To change the
well,
number.
Number of
The
districts.
number,
of
right.
districts.
And then this is
Right.
So
Yeah,
take
I think
that
we want to
clause
strike
out.
that.
so we'll strike out or may result in creation of a new
Yes,
district.
yes.
And maybe the last.
What is that? That's maybe determined from the ordinance.
Yeah, I think the town can add.
Right.
New
the
territory.
new territory by ordinance to a district.
And
They
that
can't
may-
create a new district.
And that may trigger a
A redistricting.
redistricting for the future.
Yeah.
But not for this,
For the next election.
unless they have 180 days.
No, because you'd have to add on the process of, because it would trigger the redistricting.
Right.
And once the redistricting is final, that's
Right.
what starts the 180-day counter for the next election. So,
Or you're,
Right, so
or you're,
but it still could happen, is what I'm saying. But yes, it has to follow one of that. I think we're saying the same thing.
no, it's-
so yeah, basically the last part of number 3 says just if a district changes midterm, that doesn't mean that that person, the counselor who's now out of the district becomes.
Like the term.
Yeah,
do we want to then add a 4th paragraph here that says something to the effect of that the district, the number of districts cannot be changed without a alteration of this?
I think that's implied,
Yeah.
because if we set the number of district and we don't have a way to change it by ordinance,
Then it's implied.
then it's implied that you have to change the charter to change that. Authority of the council, this seemed pretty standard among all of the charters I read, at least section 1, 3021. Anyone have any issues or considerations on any of those?
I'm not gonna write the definition of quick government.
All right, number 2, Hillary gave us some comments there. This is important provision. It's basically council hires the town administrator handles town stuff.
There's already a provision in the town code that has essentially the same force.
Right. I guess one of the questions I had here was, wasn't our previous town manager wrote some interesting provisions into the employment contracts?
Right, I heard that.
I've heard rumor of that. I haven't seen it.
There were some articles written about it that I heard, which was something like,
For bonuses and stuff.
it was like back, any person that they hired who was then fired was owed 4 years salary or something like that.
There's,
And so like,
We're speculating now, but there was some probably unethical and probably illegal things going on.
so I think, like, I was wondering, like, this allows that to happen because it's up to the town administrator to write those employment contracts however they feel.
This doesn't allow that. It
It-
says,
Directors don't have employment contracts. He's the
They
only,
don't.
Oh,
only the town manager has an employment contract.
Well, this is for staff then.
Right. Your
could hire.
comment is related to the directors. And my understanding is there may have been those, but they weren't legally enforceable.
Okay, so it's not something that we would have to worry about protecting against in the charter because they were.
And wouldn't that be under the next section? I mean, wouldn't it be under not the council's authority, but the administrator's authority?
Yes.
So that would be a different part of ours.
Okay.
And I think it's important, like Hillary calls out, to say none of the mayor or city council member can dictate anything about what's going on underneath the town manager. Not what's going on, but interfere with the work of any employee under the town manager. And that was a working agreement, not just a working agreement, a full agreement we all had on the board.
Right. Okay.
It's a good idea.
And there's, as I say, there's some good language in the existing code. It basically says trustees can talk with staff at any time, but they are not authorized. They're authorized to discuss all matters relating to town operations with employees, officers, contractors, and consultants, including the town administrator, but they shall not be authorized to give any direct orders to town employees.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear.
Is there anything too, like, if any current trustees or anything are trying to like offer words of wisdom or anything while we're discussing that? Is there anything like on that? I mean, just hypothetically speaking.
Not quite sure.
I'll tell you it got gray when I was talking to a town employee who's not Malcolm, and then we're just discussing how something is going, and either I would say, oh, it'd be nice if this happened, or like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like direct direction.
What about like if somebody was, for example, just like one of the trustees wanted their voice to heard, so they like verbatim told us exactly what they wanted us to say, just a hypothetical.
Us, you mean this?
Like
Yeah.
this group?
Yeah, I'm just throwing that
They're
out there.
still
I mean,
considered
that's
residents,
illegal,
though.
right?
No,
They're-
they're still considered residents. They
Yeah,
can-
but
just
we're
like there's
literally
direct-
writing the document that gives them power. Like,
They can make suggestions like anybody else,
Yeah.
but we don't have to agree with
yeah, okay.
Say thank you for your input.
them. Yes.
Okay, let's continue so we can get some.
For sure.
Let's see, the next one was council should be a legislative government governing body of the town. Yeah, that seems pretty standard. Number 4.
Vacancies, we have to,
Vacancies, yeah.
most charter, or not most, a lot of the charters had a section of vacancies.
Yeah.
And I think we should probably include that as well.
That was something that you had requested the first day too.
So pretty much we get rid of this subsection 4 and build out a larger group somewhere here about vacancies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think so.
The Louisville Charter has a really clear section on that, how to deal with them and what constitutes grounds for a vacancy.
Yeah.
Like somebody dies, they're
There was one
declared
that-
incompetent, they resign.
there was one that said like if they don't show up to X meetings in a row too.
Yeah.
There was
I think
one-
that's
Castle
fair,
Pines one,
right? Like-
That was a little, it felt a little overly restrictive. I guess if they miss 2 meetings in a row without excuse, then they're kicked out, and if they miss,
I didn't see 2, which one was that?
it wasn't Castle Pines that you just sent us?
Boulder has 3.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
3.
I think 3 without any type of communication,
Right.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Like,
It can be
We dealt
considered.
with that on the tree board.
Yeah,
I'd be in jail.
That's how those tree guys are.
I know, yeah, most of our advisory boards are that
The
way.
advisory boards is 3.
Yeah.
Trust meetings and like.
So then, for purposes of this meeting, should we push that to another section and come back to that?
It
As a
should.
whole section we're gonna talk about with vacancies, or?
I think it should be like section 3.12, which doesn't exist yet.
Right.
Yeah. So we should have a vacancy section.
Okay.
So I mean, it's gonna be. Yeah.
So then number 4 here that we're looking at, so in case of a vacancy, refer to.
I just don't even think you can have that.
No, you
on.
don't
can
want that
just-
because that's a statute, that's the statutory.
No, I'm not saying CRS 314303, I'm saying refer to
I'm just saying.
3.12 in this document.
Strike 4 because we're already.
It doesn't matter.
You don't-
It'll be
you
a
don't talk about
subsection.
We're gonna create it something.
And there are a lot of,
Yeah, and that's not under the authority.
I think we should look at the Louisville one. It sounds like a good recommendation from.
Okay. So we'll defer that part to our separate
Brookfield
meeting.
has it, Minnesota has it.
but we do want
We
a,
definitely.
we want a clear defined vacancy section.
Got some lines at it. Oh, no, someone has. Orange. Gold.
Louisville has 6 absences.
Excused, no, right?
It says that they has had more than 6 absences from regular council meetings during any period of the 12 consecutive calendar months. It doesn't say anything about excuse.
The challenge with excuses is who determines whether it's excused or not. The town clerk.
Come on.
I think, I don't know if you want to use the term excused, but definitely require some sort of communication.
Well, yeah, I think if you miss half the meetings for
I
any
think-
reason,
Doesn't
you're
matter.
not serving.
Yeah, I would, yeah,
You're not assuming you're
So
doing it.
if we're gonna make it 312, let's
make it 312.
make it 312.
Or whatever number it turns out.
Qualification to serve, this was pretty,
This looks pretty boilerplate.
yeah.
The one thing we'll need to add is a district resident.
Yes.
Yes, for districts.
I'm wondering too, if we should add something along the lines of like not having lawsuits with the town. Like,
I did see some of those.
I kind of think that's important.
I fully agree, yeah. If you're suing the town right now,
You probably shouldn't.
well, should you have to, if you're involved in a lawsuit with the town and you were already on the board, should you have to step off?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you already have to recuse yourself from a bunch of stuff, but should you have to step off? And then should you be not qualified to serve on the board? To start a board term if you have a lawsuit. I think that's a good one.
We can follow, I mean, would that fall under like then the ethical constraints? Because if you're suing the town, you have an ethical conflict of interest. And so you have to recuse and you don't show up. And if you don't show up for X meetings, then you're automatically,
But
But you
if
don't-
I'm in a lawsuit, if I'm suing the town,
then you should.
should I even be allowed to run?
I think there's a real legal quandary here. We want to ask Hillary about that.
Yeah, so this is a,
And
So I think to Candace's point, I did see very similar wording in multiple other charters.
That makes me feel this.
And I wonder if we should pull in some of the things from the code of ethics.
so I was gonna ask about, like, that's one of my notes is do we want a separate ethics section?
3.06.
yeah, there's a.
Is the one already there? I'm trying to remember.
Yep. Code of conduct.
So we want to,
But do we want more than that? I mean, some of them have
Let's get there.
a lot more.
so we want to ask questions, but ask Hillary what we have as far as the right to bar or to write, like, for a council member to have to resign or in ongoing litigation with the town.
Well, this is specific to being able qualified to serve
Right.
on it, but that would be all in addition to if you already are on the board and you become involved in legal matters, and then what happens? Which I think there's another section for that probably, because we would talk about that in like a recall, any type of removal.
But this, like, the qualification to serve also constitutes like sitting residents, because if any
Yes.
one of these qualifications become no longer applicable, like if a person moves out of town, that means they're no longer qualified to serve and they have to resign. So if we put it in this section, that any council member involved in litigation against the town, that means they would have to, if it's in here, that
Have to
means they would
resign.
have to resign
I
immediately.
don't remember which one.
And
What if their spouse is involved?
It really, it
What if,
depends
like-
on what's going on.
that's the thing that I was thinking is, because
I
it can
think
be
it's
like,
really hard. I
if it's an
agree with
employment
you.
contract.
I
if
think,
it's like-
I think we need Hillary's input on this one
Because,
for
I mean,
sure, but
If something weird happens,
I mean, it could be something like, things happen in towns, I don't think anything like this has happened in our town. But like, if a trustee has to, sue town for harassment or something, or
Yeah,
town
when it's a
members, like,
valid
does that count
lawsuit.
as litigation
Right, I know.
against the town? And they have to resign now?
or say they have to file suit, they were
I say that comes order of
Yeah.
retaliation.
There's a-
Um,
police issue or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, so there's,
That's what I'd be very careful about. what we're
because like,
saying.
yeah, if they're trying to sue the town due to, police, targeting them, they are now involved in litigation against the town and must resign. So the police would be able to trigger.
And the town manager could have the police trigger.
Yes.
Get someone out.
We live in such a corrupt town, I had no idea. Didn't know this was all going on.
So that's why
Sounds like
I'm
it's
kind of wary about adding a question, like a qualification that you can't be involved because of stuff like that.
I think we should ask for Hillary's advice on that.
Yes.
And,
Maybe she's watching.
indicate that that's what we're interested in adding.
Yeah.
If, to the degree that we can.
Maybe in.
She's probably totally sitting at home being like,
She's
So-
like yelling at us, no, you
With
can't
her,
do
I hope
that.
she's got a glass of wine in her bathroom.
Okay,
No,
let's
what the
continue.
limitations in DR.
Current eligible to vote in Colorado general elections.
It's like, Candace, you before talked about felonies.
yeah, that's a
And
good question. I think, yeah.
Because I
Eligible
know
to vote in Colorado general elections.
Does
You have to
that
be a
cover what-
citizen, you have to live in Erie.
I know certain charters did say cannot, like specifically called out, cannot be a felon.
So
that's
we
what I'm wondering
currently
if we
don't
wanna put
do
something like that in.
background checks on anyone.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry,
we currently don't do background checks on anybody.
right.
So current status quo is if you're registered as a Colorado voter, you're good to.
You're an active voter, you're gonna be an active voter.
Well, felons, so you can't register to vote if you're a felon,
you're a
so.
felon.
Right.
so
That's
if you're
what I'm wondering.
registered-
Would
If
we
we have a
want to do
list with
background
the
checks? So they're not
things
too expensive. I mean, right? I run
Depends on
background checks on
DPW.
20 people a day sometimes.
I mean, I do like the wording of eligible to vote in Colorado.
That way.
I would like the idea of knowing that the people who are running to be in our election have a background check because I want to know,
Well,
I'm
you can do that.
But then what are you triggered? Like,
What are you
do
looking
say?
for in that
Yeah.
background check? Because
What
if
would
it's
disqualify
if it's a
someone?
felony, they're not.
they're not going to be.
Yeah, they would.
That's what I was
What-
wondering,
what-
if there's anything else.
What if they're in an active situation with felony charges?
None of them ever said charged. All of them were
Right.
convicted.
Convicted.
I don't think you should not restrict someone who's charged.
Yes, totally. agree.
Because you are.
Someone
It's the same for
Yep.
guilty.
And then once you're convicted.
You
are no
gotta
longer
resign.
eligible to
Resign.
vote. But then when you're convicted, you're no longer eligible to vote, and then your qualification is gone.
So.
But other things in there was my question, is that we need to worry about?
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah,
how many
I know.
DUIs is considered a felony in Colorado? Because like, I know in Wisconsin, then people can get away with like 6 DUIs before the felons.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I thought ours was 3. I thought Colorado was 3, but I don't really know.
I thought a DUI was a felony, DWI was not.
No, I think they give you a couple of.
I thought.
You get a couple of.
I thought it was 3 and you're
You get a few chances to kill you.
And I wouldn't say
Or
they're free passes, but
I'm assuming.
never had one. but-
I don't think so.
So-
I mean, it sounds like we don't.
Okay, that's fine.
It's
They require people.
unfortunate.
So-
We
Chelsea
knew we
has
were
a
gonna
comment.
kind of need her.
Yeah.
So are we good with A, B, C? And should we have D basically follow the wording of C, but change it to the wards or districts, sorry, districts?
Yeah,
And then D would become E.
That's fine.
yeah, and I think Chelsea had a good comment about some of the Louisville definitions there.
Yeah, very thorough section on these things. So they include any felony offense as well as they require disclosure of embezzlement, bribery, perjury, solicitation, a lot of very important. I
Who
think
checks that though? Does that mean
There's no background check.
So you'd have to go on the honor system.
But if someone finds it, then that's.
Yeah.
under
I mean,
penalty
these
of
are all
perjury.
gonna be, these are
Yeah,
all gonna
it's-
be, like public records, when you get convicted of a solicitation charge, that will be public record. If someone finds it, and
I like that.
So you would have that as a.
That's what I was,
Yes.
yeah.
My
Yeah,
answer,
or something like
my
that.
I'm happy with the financial ones. I don't know if we need to restrict the felonies. I don't know exactly what all felonies are, but there's non-violent felonies.
right,
If
but-
they
but you
have a
can't-
felony, they're
they
not
can't
eligible to
vote.
vote anyways.
yeah, that's
Doesn't
not
matter.
So we don't need to clarify the felony.
It's the same thing, we don't need to
It was
say
just
that they
that-
have to be 18 years of age.
Right.
Because
It's just
they're
it's the non-felony ones with that Louisville added.
that are
Right.
pertinent
Yeah.
to
Right,
hold in
and
the
that's
public.
what I was asking about with some D.
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause-
I mean, and you're like, well, somebody will find it, but I mean, you're putting that burden of discovery on the voters then, right? Instead
Or-
of just,
Or penalty of perjury.
Which is
Yeah,
significant.
or you're also putting it on other candidates.
Or you could put a stipulation that you have to provide your own background check. You know?
The Louisville provision also provides if you're convicted of a felony while you're serving, then you're vacating the
Right.
office. So it spells that out specifically.
Right,
I think that's worth spelling it out.
but that's like, isn't that assumed like, as soon as you know, not, when you get convicted, you're no longer eligible to vote, and so your qualification to serve on the council is done.
It might be nice to specify.
Okay. So that would be like,
But there
at
are
the bottom, it'd be like,
elections, I don't know if that would terminate their results when they run.
Yeah.
This is to be eligible to be elected or appointed or to remain seated. No, it says to remain
to
seated.
remain seated is
seated.
included.
So that is included.
So like, yeah, if you're.
I don't
always-
think it hurts to be
I agree.
clear.
Okay.
I would put it in.
So-
That way, if somebody
Yeah.
doesn't want to leave, you can be like, right
What-
here.
What article is that, so they can type it in?
Yeah, but we'll have to send that to Hillary.
It says 3.3 C and then,
3.3.
yeah.
C.
Of
C,
the
D,
Louisville?
yeah, of Louisville. It's C through H.
So C through H, so we want to add that, or at least some subsection of it.
Just looking at it.
Yeah,
To
considering
our-
3 through H. Or, yeah,
What is that?
C through
What is the section in ours? 303?
This is 303, section.
303.1.
and for that matter, Louisville has the B above the C is related to residing in the ward, which is another one. That we
Yeah.
talked about adding to
That
the-
one, so.
I think on that, F, G,
Are you looking at these ones?
yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's included in ours, but under 2A and B.
Oh, like town employee stuff.
Yeah, town employee stuff.
Okay.
Just so we're not doing,
Okay. Yeah, I think Hillary will be checking. We'll make sure we're not repeating.
But no, but they're different. And the question is, should they be identical or do we want to hold elected officials to a higher standard? I don't know.
no, this was about employees.
Yeah,
Right, I know. And so we're now talking about trustees
counselors.
or counselors, sorry. And so we want to hold them, the question is, we want to hold employees and elected officials to the same set of standards.
I see
I
what
don't
you're saying.
think that we get to decide employees.
We're just talking about. the
We're
qualifications
only
on the
talking about
council.
Right
qualifications.
now,
The next one is just saying that you can't be an employee of the town and
And-
run.
And
And on council.
yeah, that enters.
Yeah, so there's different
But
sections
there's
for
different
town
things. I
employees.
think,
Well,
There's a
that's
whole
fine.
different section for town
I think-
administration.
I don't know, what you're talking about is, well, maybe I misunderstood what you're talking about. I think you're talking about restrictions on employees.
No,
I would
No,
also-
he was saying some of the provisions in the Louisville would be duplicated
Mhm.
from what we've already read
Oh,
here. So we just
okay.
need to make sure we don't have
Yeah.
duplicate.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that right, Brian?
Yes, thank
all
you.
right, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So in this section 303.1, we're gonna add the wording for districts and make more stringent requirements than just felony convictions. Okay. No person who is an employee of the town, that's what we just discussed. You can't be a candidate for both mayor and council member at the same time. Do we need to specify that you can't be a candidate for an at-large position and a district position at the same time?
I don't think so.
Because they're
I
two
think
separate,
maybe you should.
we should say that.
I think we should, I mean, can't we just say you can only run for
One council position.
one
Because
position,
we may-
period?
We may flip back to 3.
Yeah, you can just, you can only run for one position at a time.
In an election.
Yeah.
In an election. Yeah.
That way we don't even have to
So we have
specify it.
someone running for mayor and council.
So here we want to add that, just say you can only be on the ballot for one position per election. Okay, now we're here at asserting out the term thing.
So this is what Adam was talking about.
Yes.
I can appreciate what Adam is saying,
Mhm.
that running for, if you're already an elected official, you resign before running for something else. This is what you're saying.
Yes, the end of your term should coincide with the beginning of what you're about to run for.
Right, so, so actually.
So you would
there's two separate things
resign.
there. Can you resign, or do you have to fill out your term before you're eligible to
I
run?
think you're encouraged to fill your term, but if you want to resign, you can resign.
Yeah, okay,
Can't
that's what.
force people to fill out their terms.
Yeah.
Because then they'll just go get felonies.
But the thing is, you go there.
So, you know. But I totally get what you're saying. And then if that person loses and there's still a councilman and then there's that blood between them and the mayor that did beat them, I get it. I just don't know. It's frustrating because I'd like to think that the people that we're electing can act appropriately.
Sorry.
So
Can we put that in there? The stipulation, like, it must be
When we get into
resolved?
the code of ethics, we're gonna have some talks.
We may delete that. Well, we have a town code of ethics already, right? Someone mentioned that in the previous. Maybe we just bring that in and charterify it. Okay, so 3032.
Does anybody else feel strong about that one way or another?
I am in favor of stuff, and if you're gonna run for mayor, you're not. However that looks.
Whatever the language is that says, when you are running for a position, then you're giving up
On your current-
previous.
Well,
your
yeah,
current
I mean,
position.
you're being like, I want to abandon my role as this that you elected me
Like,
for.
maybe that's part of the qualifications, not currently. I shouldn't say not currently sitting, because you might be currently sitting and you're running for the next
The
term.
next one.
But you want, the end of your term
Well,
cannot extend into the term of the position you're running for.
How about the term of any current elected position not overlap with the term
For which you're running.
for which you're running, for the position which you're running?
Now, does that include boards and commissions?
Well, so if you're sitting on the OSTAT board and you want to, well, you don't run for anything. but-
No, but if you're running for mayor.
Then you have to, like, there's a
I'm
stipulation
asking,
somewhere
I'm not
else, you
saying
have
you
to,
have to, but.
there's a
Yeah,
stipulation somewhere else where you have to resign from boards and commissions if you get elected.
If you
Right.
get elected, so, but you're gonna,
I think that,
I think that's okay.
I think that's,
Because I don't think you're not talking the same.
I'm not,
It's not- yeah, it's not a direct-
There's not gonna be
I know,
interaction or
I-
bad blood.
I just wanna make sure we're clear, that's all.
Is your cup melting?
No.
It looks
They're all-
It's just
they're
kind
all-
of,
they're all-
yeah, it's just kind of weird.
Yeah, mine,
Yeah, those
like,
are
mine
also-
bottom bubbled out too.
It's decomposing already.
Like the neighbors.
It's so warm in here that comes from.
I appreciate the intent, goodness.
Just let people know it's now 10:09. I mean, I'm okay to go.
I'm fine tonight.
My wife said see you at midnight, so.
Oh, that's gonna be after.
I also
9:30.
told my wife we were hitting a hard topic today, so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my husband's watching right now. In between,
Staff,
like.
Are you guys okay to continue supporting us through this?
Good.
We got a nice.
No,
break
you guys
coming.
have to go home now.
Yes, let's take a bio break, just a stretch bio break. Let's reconvene at
Can we
9.
predict a time that we can close off?
Yes, sir.
Not come back, but like, do you think the meeting will be over, or how far are we trying to go?
And I would want to hit like our agenda requires us to at least get through this section, this article.
We're not two pages down, 4 to go.
Okay, do we know any meetings that are coming up with sections that there'll be very little? Stickering?
Meeting 6, there's nothing.
Okay, so.
And the open comment section, the open comment meetings are the ones that we leave a lot of space to do go backs. So,
Reading forward on this, there's a lot of stuff that's probably not gonna be hard to talk about.
yeah,
That's what I'm
what,
thinking too.
exactly.
We're really hitting the hard stuff right up front,
Yeah.
I think.
it's very,
So,
I think we'll take a break so that people can stretch and we'll come back at 9. And we'll continue. We will put a hard stop at 10
Okay.
if we're not past that. And we'll hopefully aim to be finished. before.
watch keeps telling me to stand up.
Yeah.
It keeps
Time
going
to
on.
stretch. time to walk. All right, we'll be back.
was gonna stand up and breathe.
It went away. Mine tells me, it looks like you're stressed right now. Take deep breaths.
No, really, mine's like, it's almost there, you're standing up, you're.
I turned my reminder off because it's too sad.
It's like you haven't stood up for 7 hours.
Like, can't you tell I'm watching the movie? Leave me alone.
It's like Netflix being judgy. Are you still watching?
Are you still watching? I
Thanks,
know.
Netflix.
Yeah, there's 3 more seasons.
I'll tell you when I'm done.
We have open space.
Yeah, that was one of our preferred ones.
They get their
I think we had said
emails on their phones.
Yeah. And I'm very willing to.
Now we have to not only man, oh, we're gonna say, okay, you're what?
What are your qualifications on that, Bob?
Message Hillary, because she said she was gonna look at some of she was gonna look at drafting. that
You're-
or something
What do you
else.
have? There's a board right up here.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's why she was gonna go
Straight up.
further.
Oh, there's like, I've got.
If you're gonna work directly with her to draft that.
And she.
I'm gonna have to do laundry meeting.
No,
Right?
she's been copied on some of the,
It's just Hillary Grant, so
Yeah.
she's in one of your emails you got, it's just
but it is the law firm.
HNG or whatever.
Like house.
She's not officially.
Yeah.
She's like a contract.
We could get rid of her and get a new
I do.
town lawyer.
Our town attorney is Ken.
Right, is she still, is she a town employee?
She is a contract.
Like everybody on the boards.
Yeah.
It feels special.
Right now.
So that makes me start to have my kids.
Yeah, you remember?
We can lose it.
Did you know if Patty got those pictures?
I'm not sure. She is more technical because the camera's not.
So maybe,
So we.
yes.
Stand up and stretch.
I don't have my watch yelling at me.
I don't wear a watch.
I know.
Yeah. It's like, "Sir, did you take a tumble?"
I did, I crashed my bike.
I can see that. Ooh.
It's scraped me up pretty good.
Wowza.
Yeah, but it's all part of the fun.
Not my kind of fun.
Yeah.
I know, well, what it does is it restricts me from working out for like, 3 days, 4 days. I just finally got back in the gym today. This happened on Saturday. So.
I was gonna ask you what's up with that.
Yeah, it crashed on my bike.
Motorized or otherwise?
Unless I get Express open.
Well, this was dirt biking. That's a new thing I picked up. So when you're 46, you should pick up motocross.
No. Wait till you're my age and all of a sudden you can't walk.
Oh my gosh.
I can't. Most frustrating thing is like. I'm not.
I know, I just want to go up a stair.
Yeah, exactly. My little bands.
Or at least acknowledge that I'm giving it away.
My little bands.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, I appreciate definitely. Because I understand.
Yeah, yeah, when I- No, that's something that's.
Did you steal my little bands? You're not on my
That's correct.
We, I think Patty's gonna come.
You know what's nice about this meeting? I don't have to.
About the stuff we have.
It's really interesting.
They are.
I'm excited. Hopefully one of them.
Hoping we get more residents here.
My experience with residents, that we're not broadcasting. My experience with residents is that they wait until the last
Yeah,
minute
I mean.
and then they come in and complain.
And there's a couple carrying.
Yep.
It doesn't. It's not like
I've seen that one too many times.
And it's, when I first started working here, I worked in Parks and Rec.
And you know, the guy would come out, just 15 years ago, but the guy would come in. Looks like the program's not gonna go, not gonna go, not gonna go. Day before it starts, boom. everybody starts. Seriously?
Oh, I'll just go get more.
Something weird. Unless it's like youth league and then it fills up like.
Well, now it's, I mean, summer camp,
Yeah.
like the first 10 minutes, it's gone.
Kind of like a Taylor Swift concert. So.
And what was with that? I don't actually.
They're all on the resale market now.
That's crazy. That's just not right.
There are some, it's like nosebleed in like Austin or Houston or whatever, somewhere in Texas. It's like $40,000 is like.
For a ticket? Oh, I found him. Danny, I found him.
For Taylor Swift.
For Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
It's not that good. I wouldn't pay 40.
It's crazy.
I'm sorry, that's how much I spent for my car.
There was some
Yeah. I found him here on the floor.
Oh, I looked there. I didn't see
I
it.
didn't either, but as soon as you walked out of the room, I found him.
She was all orange.
Let's get what your favorite colors.
Everything she has. Color.
The meeting was good.
Yeah.
So nothing. was Yeah. Everyone's nice, I guess. True. So do either of you have any fun plans for the holidays?
You're taking days off.
I'm taking, yeah, I'm taking between Christmas and New Year's. I always think about
I mean, when you have days that don't carry over, you gotta take them off sometime.
No, ours carry. Once you get up to like 300 and some hours. But you've been here forever.
That's what my wife has to do. She has to take days off because then
She's starting to lose them.
So
Are you guys doing anything good?
So we're going to the Gaylord. They have like their holiday stuff
Yeah.
there. Yeah, so last year we did my family. Now this year we're gonna do it with her family.
Oh, cool.
Well,
That's neat.
and they always do something different each year.
Yeah.
Last year was like,
But then
someone's like, one for the first, like Halloween movies.
Just trying to make sure.
This year it's gonna be the Charlie Brown Christmas, the ice sculptures, so.
That's cool.
That's cool, yeah.
You didn't have to. That's why you didn't want to leave.
Well, you wouldn't have been doing any
He's over there. They have a tradition where they decorate her in-laws Christmas tree on the 15th, and she had it on tonight.
Next Friday.
Nobody helps me decorate my time.
You seem devastated.
Well, we realized she really didn't need to be here. And you know, how now I know why she's
So I'm
going.
excited about that.
I've been doing it for what now, 28 years? No, 30 actually, because
Before you got married.
before I got married, yeah.
Yeah, nobody helps me decorate. my tree.
Nobody helps me.
Except my husband. Oh, there's four there.
Who did this for me?
I did it. You're welcome.
You know, I was planning on drawing on it, but now I might want to.
We can pitch another.
Really?
We could just
Oh,
look
yeah.
at it, laminate it, and they can use,
Yeah.
you know, dry erase markers.
Literally, when I decorate my house, that's all. Not very-
Stories.
Yeah. One of these, I can either bring have a back sitting here for next meeting, or if you want to pick them up for the next meeting.
Can you send the PDF?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also available on our town website.
Is it?
Oh, this is where I go get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, send
It
us a
is,
link.
I just wanted a nice big copy, because like 101 with GIS is actually being able to draw on that and having one that you can.
Yeah, I'll send you guys.
Come on, they do it in there.
I'm kind of away from my computer tomorrow, so anything that I would promise to me is not gonna happen tomorrow.
gonna
can find our
send you
next
15
meeting.
emails
You can
tomorrow.
send me 15 emails. I'll try not to forget. So are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Gabby?
Oh, yeah.
You can go ahead and start the recorder. Or the-
Yeah, she started it. Okay, so just to kind of touch on what we sort of decided as we were adjourning, but in 303, section 2B, rather than saying you can continue your term, we want to say that in order to run for another position, the start of the new position has to coincide with the end of your current position.
Yeah, that may need some more wordsmithing, but
Yeah.
I think
I think that's the general idea. is We
Yeah.
don't want you running for a position in the middle of your term, losing, and then being a sour grape on the board for the rest of your term.
Yep.
That's the
Just
intent.
right
Yeah. That's just our
I
preamble.
honestly think
No.
voters would appreciate that.
Malcolm and I were just talking about the preamble. We should just have that, like, no sour grapes.
We just find sour.
And then 100 years like now they're gonna be like, "Oh, look at this old language that they use."
We don't even have grapes.
Okay, and the whole thing, we wanted to add into section 2 that there's gonna be one person. You can only run for one position on the ballot at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh? It's not on there.
I thought I read this.
It's similar.
Yeah,
You're
but
just
like,
clarifying the language.
right,
2A.
it's because we'll
Oh.
have wards and mayor and all
Yes,
that
sir.
stuff, so
All right. Good job.
so you can't run. Okay. The town clerk shall be judged for all qualifications, that's pretty standard. Then it has a lot of power. Council meetings. Once a month minimum cadence, unless increased by ordinance.
Twice a month now, same.
Is it by?
Both of those are weekly. just so
Oh my
you know.
goodness.
It's
So,
a,
maximum 52 meetings. That's for,
No, that's how many they get paid for.
ooh,
It can be more than 52. They don't get
Okay.
paid for more than 52. They only get paid for.
I think once
They
a
get-
month is
So
fine.
right now
and
they're
they can
doing-
increase it by
yeah,
ordinance if we
Right
want
now,
to.
we're doing two council meetings in a study session.
And they get paid by the meeting.
They get paid
they get paid up to 52,
Up
for
to
up to
50.
52 meetings.
up to 52 meetings. If they go to more than that,
Sorry, Travis.
okay,
My concern with once a month is that enough? Adam is.
no,
Yeah.
but I don't know that we want to require more than one.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to require it. We just let them make it ordinance is what works.
because I think that as voters, our recourse is recall or. open up.
If you require more than one, then December sometimes becomes a problem because you have holiday issues.
So
If
could
they
you,
can still do more than one, then they can have special meetings, but requiring more than one could be a problem.
could you require one per month minimum and then you do a minimum of 20 meetings per year as well?
I just don't know why we would need to do that. If they feel like they need to meet more, they can make that ordinance to do so, but looking down the road, there may not be a need for it once you've reached our limit, our limit of expansion. We won't have as much that they would have to necessarily be discussing potentially. I just don't know why we would require that.
I've never seen anybody not have a meeting when there was a reason for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So stick with once a month, require minimum,
Charter and then the boards can do whatever they want,
yeah,
or the council.
and so can increase by ordinance if they'd like. Quorum requirements. So if we have less than, okay, yeah, this assumes we're doing it the 7, so 4 is a quorum. Absence of a quorum, lesser can continue any, so basically they can just delay and reschedule the meeting if there's less than 4.
And sometimes they say if someone has to leave, the motion to end the meeting can be made with less than a quorum. I don't know if you care about that.
we don't motion to adjourn now.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay.
You have to have 4 to have a quorum. If you end up at 3 at some point, then
You have to stop.
The meeting's over.
The only action, yeah, because then at that point, the only action you can take is to reschedule.
Schedule another meeting.
So I think that's good to say. 3, all regular and special meetings of the council shall be open to the public. Yes, very much so. Written minutes of the, is that that's already passed, right? The written minutes are kept by the town clerk and signed by the mayor. Is that already done or not?
Is it signed by the mayor or by the presiding officer?
well, presiding officer.
So we should change it to presiding officer. So if the mayor's not there and the mayor pro tem's in charge.
Well, when we get to the powers, I think all of
It
the mayor,
defaults.
yeah.
If the mayor's not there, it defaults to pro temp.
because it says when the mayor pro tem acts as mayor.
Yeah.
It's always an acting mayor.
That's good.
Okay. So 3 is good. Voting, votes by each of the mayor and council members for and against or to take about passage of all ordinance and resolutions and entered into the meetings. So Hillary's note is that basically you can't just abstain.
No, Hillary's note says it has to have roll call votes, and
Yeah.
we don't want to force that.
Right.
Yeah, and talking with Kendra, she said, this voice vote should be permissible as long as the presiding officer calls out the outcome of the vote. And if it's unclear in a voice vote, then you can go back and require a roll call vote.
And any council member can request a voice vote or roll call. Sorry.
Yeah,
Usually the mayor, it's up to the mayor to drive that, but maybe the town clerk could say, I didn't catch that.
Which I would do if I didn't.
Yeah. Okay, so that's already under your power though, right, to require a roll call vote?
We only do roll calls for items that include money.
I was gonna say money or public hearings. Would be roll call.
Okay.
Well, but I think
I would-
Hillary's not here as saying, the language of this says that every vote by every member has to be recorded. And she can't do that if it's a 5-2 or a 4-3. It's just real hard. So that's why it says, that's why a roll call is necessary.
So
What
is
I
it-
do is if it's a 5-2, because I keep a record of all resolutions and ordinances that get passed, if it's a 5-2, I note that in my records who the 2 naysayers were, so that then you know who the yeses were.
Okay, so maybe instead of requiring a voice vote, or sorry, I'll get it right, a roll call vote, we just say the result, the breakdown of the votes must be recorded in the minutes.
should be, Kendra's recommendation was it should be clear that a voice vote is permissible as long as the outcome of the vote is announced by the presiding officer.
Okay. And so that leaves space for anyone to dispute, say, I don't think that was the right result or whatever. Right. Okay. Can you?
Yep.
Replace the entirety of.
I think 305.1 would be replaced by all votes shall be recorded in the minutes, voice votes are permissible as long as the
Yeah, that
result
was clear.
is, sorry, what?
Yeah.
But then where do we say spending money requires a roll call vote? Or do we not say that?
You don't have to.
We,
That's something that in a home rule charter is, you can just have a voice vote. You also need to think about, sometimes we might go to an electronic voting system where I press a button. Any.
That was fun.
We had that once.
Yeah. Kendra's recommendation was make it permissible to vote in whatever way you want, as long as the results of the vote are clear. So I think we
And
can
announced by
come
the
up with, yeah, and announced by the presiding officer. We can come up with some specific language to address this.
yeah, I think we are in agreement, that's good wording,
Yes.
that's good, like, that's a good concept, so, yeah, just whatever wording that she suggests, please send it
The
over.
roll call is unnecessarily burdensome at times and takes up a lot of time. We have lots of issues.
So I'm just gonna wait for the wording from you before I send that to Hillary. Okay, to be adopted, every non-emergency ordinance shall require affirmative vote of the majority of the council present.
Did you skip them?
No,
No, we're on
that was
two
two, yeah. Um,
No, there's on three.
no, that was two.
Apparently
Non-
they say
Non-emergency. Number
No.
2 is non-emergency, number 3 was
Well,
And
no.
number 2 is
No.
ordinance.
ordinance, right? And then there's resolution and motion.
The
No,
second,
you are,
305.
you're in the right spot.
That's a,
2 is ordinance and
Right.
3 is resolutions.
right.
right, but 2 has a second half that's been
Right.
called out by Hillary.
Yeah, so two, like Hillary says, 2/3 of those present is lower than statutory requirements. So right now, every non-emergency ordinance requires us affirmative vote of 3/4 of the council.
Every emergency requires 3/4.
No, she says.
Yeah.
But this is specific to,
Non-emergency. She says in non-emergency, statutory is 3/4.
So an emergency ordinance is,
The
is,
second half of the sentence is emergency.
It's
highlighted
emergency,
emergency.
every
Every
emergency ordinance.
sorry, sorry.
shall require majority.
Yes, that's right.
There should probably be a period.
yeah, you need to understand what an emergency ordinance is. Because sometimes ordinances take 2 hearings or 2 readings to get passed. And you're trying to get something done in 1 meeting as opposed to having to read it twice.
Yeah.
Vote on it twice. It was burdensome to have to get 5 people to vote in favor of something to make it an emergency. When 2 people, very likely 2 to 3 people, are not in favor of using an emergency to get something done, they want the standard process. But then staff or situation argues that we should probably do this a little faster because we need to take advantage of, you know, a grant date or a development restriction or some kind of thing that we're trying to get around. And that's why you would do it by emergency. The statutory requirement of 3/4, I'm telling you, stopped a few emergency ordinances in my time.
So 3/4 is 6 votes and 2/3 is 5 votes.
Right, it was 6, you had to get 6. And a sour grape trustee might just vote against it because
They're sour.
why not? Why let you get something done on time?
I'm good with 2/3. Is there any?
More about that. You want 6 votes to pass an emergency?
Or is it really an emergency?
Well,
That's up to the council to decide. That's why we picked them. Okay.
Can you give us some examples of ordinances that require 2 readings?
Actually, we don't do that anymore. That was something that Kendra pointed out. We don't have to do 2 readings as a statutory town, but there are good reasons, I would say, to have a 2/3 vote for emergency ordinances. It just ensures that there is a council supermajority. But 3/4 is a really rough standard, and I don't know of other jurisdictions that have that.
Okay, so the situation I'm talking about doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. So, but like, you still need like near unanimous for an emergency ordinance. And
507.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also present. So very important people are there. You do that, but
I mean, if it's only 4 people,
I guess
3/4 or 2/3 is the same.
There will be some overlap in when you get to what are the procedures for adopting an ordinance, whether it does require 2 readings or not. So that and that's elsewhere in the charter, if you define it that way. So there could be a situation where if you want to have 2 readings for every ordinance, then what you're talking about could come into play. So keep that in mind when you get to that section on procedures for adopting ordinances and resolutions, whether they require 2 readings or not.
So what is the example like of let's say a common emergency ordinance?
There could be a funding issue, like Mr. Hayes said, that a grant application that requires a short turnaround time, a deadline like that.
There were some.
And that would like pass up on a grant because of a sour grape, it's a grant, you know, it's like,
Yeah, well, they're gonna make the council look bad because you couldn't get the funding, something like that. There were
a number of emergency ordinances involving the pandemic.
Yeah.
So life safety issues are typically the ones you think of.
Then we do like response to.
We've had some where we've done
like
it
local
because
emergencies as well.
they missed the,
I was trying to listen to.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's just
No.
it was a 2-second reading, it was just posted in the newspaper twice.
is that what it was?
Yeah.
Some ordinances don't take effect until 30 days after, some days after the ordinance has been accepted, and if there's 2 readings, which we're not anymore, but sometimes you can say an emergency ordinance takes effect now. You don't have to wait 30 days until that happens, and that's where you're responding to the pandemic. Granting emergency powers to the county administrator, things like that.
I definitely would like more time to think about it. I think I should come back to this.
Okay. Anyone else, like, you said you were 2 minds, what was your consideration?
Well, it's just, I guess I just don't wanna see ordinances just ran through.
Yeah, you wanna see it being abused,
Exactly.
going
I
under
mean,
emergency.
Exactly.
I see
Yeah.
it, I see what you're saying.
And the balance then is keeping it from being abused versus making it like when it's
Not
really
being
is needed.
Typical, yeah.
It's a timing issue. It's almost completely a timing issue, because otherwise a majority will pass it with the normal timing. It's, you need a super majority to move it up, and usually to take advantage of some time situation. So,
I am concerned about like hamstringing the council as well. By requiring, like you said, a supermajority like 6 or. Because that is,
Very close to unanimous.
yeah, and like you said, there's always gonna be some internal council politics at play. Do we want to vote on this one since this is a
I'm still kind of stuck.
2/3 or?
Yeah, I don't-
We're debating 2/3 versus 3/4.
Yeah.
Just.
For emergency powers.
five
I mean, we
versus
can
6
move
being-
on and come back.
you also have a defined emergency,
Yeah,
Yeah.
redefined
okay, so let's
emergency.
wait until we get to what is an emergency ordinance. And then.
That's what I'm, it's right. I mean, it's not my definition.
Okay,
I
so
agree.
we'll defer that.
There's also something like choosing 7 over 9, which I'm not trying to revisit. That number changes.
Don't revisit. You got past that page. But yes, you're right.
Erie is much larger and they decide to expand the council in many years. then
And they can go to 3/4.
They could, I mean, potentially, yeah,
Yeah, so.
they're never to do that.
All right, we'll defer that question. Just, yeah, it does take one, it will take into consideration what exactly emergency powers are talking
Yeah.
about. So 3, to be adopted, every resolution in motion shall require majority, that's
fine.
standard. Every council member present and mayor shall vote on every matter. So basically, this is a no abstention.
But her point is good. If you have to recuse yourself, it shouldn't count as a yes vote. That's sort of.
Right, that's gonna be a conflict of interest thing.
Right.
I think,
And so that's what her comment is about,
Mm,
is letting people recuse themselves.
well, that's what this paragraph is about.
Yeah.
it says that they can't abstain.
Yeah,
Right, but if you're
Unless they say this is a
Yeah,
conflict.
this is a conflict.
Oh,
So
yeah,
then
okay,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah,
excused from, okay, I missed that line, sorry.
due to conflict of
So I
interest.
agree.
Why, though, why wouldn't we allow them the option to abstain?
We,
It's something that they feel like they.
No, they're elected to represent the people they need to represent.
this is in every charter I've read,
Yeah,
that's the statement.
basically, they don't want people to show up, contribute to the quorum, and then just refuse to vote.
That happened a couple times.
It did.
And you're like, well,
Yeah,
you're just abstaining you don't want to vote yes or no, you need to take a position, like, you're
Yeah.
here to do that.
Unless it's a conflict of interest.
and I'm fine with if someone just like sits in the corner and faces the wall and says, I'm not gonna vote.
Then it's a yes.
That's literally their job. That's what they're doing.
And that is very standard.
This was pretty much everywhere. Code of ethics, so.
I'm wondering, I'm sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, the town has a code of ethics. Do we want, and Louisville had a good example of one. That, yeah, Malcolm mentioned as well.
It's very detailed.
And so
I've seen several.
it's a codified, because what I've seen in a lot is the council gets to decide what is the code of ethics. that applies to that.
Which is what this is saying now.
Right. And so
And
I'm not a fan of that.
Other-
Agree.
I would
But
like,
this, isn't this also an area that is ripe for refinement on a regular basis?
well,
That would ethics 10, 15 years ago apply today?
No, but
Social media is now in play. There's.
society has moved a lot.
Yeah, a bunch of other societal issues that someone might be inflaming.
so what is the, like, the Lewis bill, I can't remember, I read it and I don't remember what's in it, but it has a codified code of ethics in the charter. Does anyone have that one open?
I got it.
I have it here. It is.
Section 4, Open governance and ethics. Code of ethics. Sections 5 through 6, 5-6 through 5.17 shall be known as a code of ethics. Those entrusted with positions in the city government must commit to adhering to the letter and spirit of the code of ethics. Only when the people are confident that those in positions of public responsibility are committed to high levels of ethical and moral conduct will they have faith that their government is acting for the good of the public. This faith in the motives of officers, public body members, and employees is critical for a harmonious and trusting relationship between the city government and the people it serves.
So I think I'm in favor of taking this 5.6
Definitions.
through 5.17. And obviously there's something we'd have to change, like
Making an
city and
article out of
town. And putting it in their charter.
Well-
This one as well.
What do you got?
I mean,
No, the
Lewis
same
bill
one,
is-
Lewis, the one,
it's
yeah.
pretty much an article
Yeah.
about ethics, so they have an ethics article.
Or a separate article, yeah, which is what.
Open
Oh, you're
government.
saying it's not part of their charter, it's.
No, it's
It's
part of
in
the
the
charter.
It's in the charter.
It's
We're
not,
talking about Article 3,
it's in their charter, it's not
It's
ours.
a, yeah, it's a whole
and it's many pages.
section of
It
their
is many
charter.
pages, yeah. It's, starts on page 14 and goes.
The other option is entrusts the town of Erie to maintain a code of ethics that the council votes on. And yes, you're right, they could probably change it in order to get around some ethical problem that they feel is necessary, but then that's in the open and being done, obviously. I think it's easier to do it by ordinance than by changing the charter or trying to keep up with ethical dilemmas of a progressing society.
Well,
There's this puts, they have to file a lot of information with the clerk's office, and I'm not sure how that is.
I don't know.
so you'd be required to keep like a running, like, file on each.
The person's
Counselor.
employer and occupation and nature of any income in excess of $1,000 per year.
Financial
per source.
disclosure.
Yeah. Plus property.
Requiring financial disclosures wouldn't be that thing.
Well, it's. But who reviews it?
Well, it's just disclosed.
Yeah, it would be filed with the town, the town clerk would hold it. And if we
Thanks.
wanted to require it to, since it would be a file with the town, it would become
No,
open record.
Yeah.
And
Wait a minute, so a
and they do that in Boulder.
council member's personal finances need to be registered with the town.
That's what Louis.
Are you talking like tax returns or?
I don't know if, like, we would define the financial, but.
Yeah, this
That
is a
is-
very long,
It's a very.
this is
long
an
story.
article, it's a full article
Right.
on ethics. So if we want to do that, then it needs to be a meeting, because it's
Yeah.
gonna take a long time to flesh out.
Okay,
And if
so
we don't, then we can get away with the paragraph.
I don't have anything. No, I'm just,
it would be a lot.
I just had never really thought about that, but yeah, I know Boulder, they file their financial stuff.
So do they require tax returns? Is that?
I don't remember. That was our elections girl took care of all that. So I just helped her at times.
Every amount of income that's greater than $1,000, regardless of source, has to be declared. Like, I mean, that's a tax return.
But even
I'm not in favor
even
of that.
non-taxable stuff. So it's a lot of information. That's not.
That may reduce your candidate pool.
That's what I was thinking. when we
Yep.
were doing
Look
it.
at- look at-
Weren't we talking about increasing the candidate pool?
Okay,
That's a lot, yeah.
I would then that this should be its own meeting.
So we will defer code of ethics, we will leave it as it is, because right now it says the council will maintain a code of ethics. And then
wanna
we can discuss it.
Yeah.
I'm very, it doesn't have to necessarily be as complex as this,
Yeah,
but I think we want something.
and I
It
don't
needs
think,
to be robust,
yes,
like whatever
yes,
we have
agreed.
needs to be robust. I think ethics are definitely a priority from the people I've spoken to about this. So yeah, I agree, maybe not as complex, but definitely.
and I guess maybe this is a time to bring it up, but like one of the things I was thinking of is like a transparency article. Like we're already subject to Cora, but having some other article that maintains transparency with the town, maybe provide some funding to make sure we have like, you know, like people who are there to be able to do stuff like this for the town, like make sure that they can respond to Coras in a timely manner, make them free for citizens. That might help encourage people to be involved. And it would maintain that the town is committed to doing this sort of transparency. And that might be good to roll up into like an ethics section.
Yeah.
So we can defer that talk later, but it's something that had been on my mind. A lot of people, like, it seems a common theme that people like the transparency with Cora and sometimes have issues with how it works. And so if we can dedicate something beyond the state requirement, it would help increase people's engagement with the town and trust in the town.
If you look at what I sent out, you don't have to, but under general provisions, I have a question as to whether or not we want to include open government and ethics, and you'll be able to see which towns have their own section about it.
So yeah, that was one thing. We can defer that to a different, one of our.
This involves city prosecutor under enforcement.
Yeah, there is an enforcement clause in Louisville for the code of ethics.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I haven't read it, but they haven't, they enforce it.
So interesting.
They wrote,
They
they
want
want
to
to
I mean, that
enforce it.
was really
It's
super
whether they
important
do
to them, and,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That would
Go
be-
Louisville.
Well, I noticed that some of these.
We probably heap more of that responsibility on Debbie.
What I noticed in some of these is it seems that the town had something going on. in this town.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they put something in their charter.
Yeah.
And for
We are
different
just trying
reasons.
to, we're just trying to protect for the future.
Huh?
Right.
Yes.
And so we don't need to be that detailed, but I think we do wanna, this might be one that would be a perfect topic for one of our open meetings. Like, what does the town wanna see from the government as far as ethics and transparency? Because
We
that
might have
would
a town meeting where people get along, it'd be awesome.
be.
All right.
Then, yeah, let's go. Compensation, how do we wanna do this?
I'm okay with doing it by ordinance rather than having us say something specific.
So
We're doing this.
most of the charters are ordinance, and then they have a lot of provisions about how you pay stuff, and in my opinion, that's a little goofy, especially with staggered terms. I do like the way Boulder does it. I'm not saying we do it exactly like this, maybe I'll get into that, but they pay $100 per meeting, up to 52 meetings max. And then they adjust it on January 1 based off of CPI. And they started that in 1990. I think for my numbers, and Jamie Boulder clerk, maybe we can figure this out, but they get paid $220 a meeting.
It sounds
roughly.
right.
So that's like $10,000 a year, which is nominally $1,000 a month. So if we did something like that, where you just say, you're pegged to this and you can't increase your own rates without going to a vote. I do like that because it says this is what you get, and you don't have to deal with ordinances and people raising or lowering pay.
Typically, the new pay doesn't start until your term ends.
Yeah.
Right,
so-
Yeah.
Right. And obviously, we wouldn't be paying as much as Boulder is. Boulder's.
Well, it's pegged to CPI.
No, Boulder, we might be paying, if we do $1,000 a month like Longmont for the counselors, that's $12,000 a year per counselor. So, which is more than Boulder. And
I'm
Longmont
telling
pays
you,
50.
300 is not enough.
Yeah.
Right, and that's
300.
in, was that?
That was,
in-
is monthly, 300 monthly.
300
It just, it doesn't, it reduces the candidate pool. It doesn't encourage the type of participation that is necessary to keep up with the agendas.
Right.
And, you know, the
I mean,
plethora of
if
stuff
you're
that's coming
meeting,
your way.
if you're meeting twice, you meet what, 4 times a month, right?
Well, the study sessions and meetings, but yeah, it was 4 times a month.
So you meet 4 times a month and you end up with
$300 minus taxes, 220.
Yeah.
Not enough to pay your water bill.
So you get like $50 a meeting, and that's like,
And you're deciding not that you need to be paid, I mean, this is an elected position, this isn't your job, but you do need to put in the diligence to understand all the various things. And yes, you've got staff and advisors and things like that, but
yeah, I don't think it needs to be a full-time job, but I think that it needs to be a little bit more incentive than 50 a month or 50 a meeting or whatever. Right.
Because what you're doing to the candidate pool issue.
Yeah.
Is you're encouraging people who can afford to do it almost pro bono.
Yeah, who was however many hours per meeting, 4 times per month.
Yeah, because you guys start at 6, then you go to past midnight.
Not them now, but.
That's right, you guys did.
Yeah, you still, well, you're there before 6:30 and you're easily there till midnight.
What
Study
is,
sessions were quicker usually.
What have your experiences in other towns been? I guess when someone has gone from lower pay to higher pay or something like that.
I think we've covered the issues of the pay limits who can serve on the council to people who are either independently wealthy or retired or both. And if you want to encourage a greater candidate pool, there should be some compensation. The other side of the argument is this is a volunteer position and shouldn't require any pay. So they're both, those are the two competing perspectives.
There's also, this is a volunteer position. I'm taking daggers constantly from everybody. Is this worth it anymore?
So we've heard anyone in favor against raising pay or
Including it.
Well, yeah, the question is.
or yeah,
to
hard including it.
Yeah,
into
the
their-
question is to include in the charter explicitly with maybe a COLA or whatever. Or do you say, let the
Let the town
board
decide.
determine,
Like,
or that's the other alternative, let the town decide.
You mean let the town council decide?
Well, the way it's written right now is the town council, because it's by ordinance.
Yep.
We could say,
If you do.
It's ours. It's an ordinance now.
right now,
It
it's
is an
ordinance, right.
It's
And-
a
and
vote,
So the question, there's 2 other options. Go on.
Well, the reason that it doesn't happen by ordinance often is because it is a political,
Right.
hot potato. You don't want to touch that one.
Right, so
When
there's
you're in
2,
office.
right, and I'm not disagreeing with you. So there's 2 other options. One is have the town administrator set a rate. Another
boy.
one. The other one is we decide, and with a COLA or something. Across the board.
I mean,
anyone feels strongly?
Or is there another option?
I feel like I feel like we have to leave some space for it to be fluid, assuming that this document is going to be used years and years and years down the road. But I also think that we have to kind of keep it,
Clamp it. So
yeah, a little bit. I mean, so like, it's like, okay, if it's gonna exceed a certain percentage, then maybe that needs to go to a vote to the residents. Put that back on into the hands of the residents.
You talking about ordinance?
No,
general.
yes, ordinance first, but if the council decides it's going to be this huge raise, then, and it exceeds a certain percentage, then that would have to go to the people for a vote.
So adding more restrictions to the ordinance that they can pass.
Yeah,
Right.
so like basically if they're.
Just being like, okay, if you're in office and you know you're gonna run, you're probably gonna win for your next term, you can't be like, I'm gonna double my salary, you know what I mean? Like,
But then
that's,
the
it's
voters
just,
get to choose if they.
Well,
Also-
isn't it already like a pretty known rule when you vote to increase your pay, it doesn't take effect until the next election?
Yeah.
right, but if.
As long as it's in the chart, which we want to keep.
We would definitely keep that.
And then remember, if the council does something that's really outrageous, there is the provision of referendum.
Referendum initiative.
Yeah, so. we can
Or
address
there's
that in
what
that
Ben talked
section.
about, which is we set what we consider reasonable and have a cost of living increase tied to whatever.
Longmont also said it in their charter, but they just didn't do anything, and then they had to amend the charter to increase their pay,
I like,
which I think is burdensome.
I agree. I like the formula base.
Yeah.
Or you said
It's
it.
very,
That's why it's out of anyone's hand, but it also does fix, you avoid that political landmine.
Right.
And then you avoid the issue where people are working for little pennies to decide the outlook of a town that's
This big.
this big and growing faster. Okay,
Tied to CPI or whatever.
do we have an idea for a number and tied to CPI? Cause like, what you said.
so Longmont is 1,000 per council member and 1,500 per mayor, or like for the mayor
Per month.
per month. And that's $10,000 or $100,000 roughly to the town cost. Just as a reference, the total to pay these people.
I think that it would have been fair to get probably 4 times the amount of pay that we had. So 1,200 for a trustee and 2,000 for a mayor. That might have been a little, that felt a lot more reasonable. Now, I'm not saying that that's what we should throw in now. I like where Boulder started was some number that then adjusted as it went on. So we could start with some number that's probably the same as Boulder or Longmont right now, figure out what that is on a per meeting. And it includes study sessions and regular meetings, right? Or
I mean, Boulder does it per meeting and then Longmont just goes per month.
because then again, America call 5 meetings every day.
Yeah, but they have a maximum.
But
That's good.
can I say from a staff perspective, both, we ran it, because it's much easier for staff if you pick a flat
Right, that's what I was gonna
monthly
suggest.
amount, because then it's just plugged into the payroll system.
And for budgeting as well, it makes it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So I
But
would
then,
do it.
yeah, if people miss too many meetings, they're still getting paid for meetings that they're not there, right?
But
But
there's
there's too
some,
many meetings to get thrown
Yeah.
off from council.
I mean,
So-
even 1,000 is more than 300. So even if you started 1,000, it was.
yeah, there are 1,015, which is where Longmont is, and then we build in some, I won't say escalator, but adjustment.
Yeah, I would tie it to a standard.
Population is what, 100,000?
Close to.
Does Erie have a current cost of living adjustment, or is it just on a case-by-case basis, people get raises?
There's,
Like for town employees.
Oh, we do cost of living, annual cost of living.
So I think we should use the same multiplier.
I think
Match
Boulder's does say that. So Boulder, it's Article 2, Section 7, just has all that wording.
See, I could have swore that I kept hearing specifically one council member in Boulder saying $14,000 a year is not enough. So,
For Boulder,
yeah,
which,
So-
well,
but
Okay, that's
he
fair,
was a
Boulder's-
very young council member who, probably didn't make a huge salary. We also had one that was a student. She was in her 20s, but she was a student at CU, so, and that was her only income, so.
Well,
It's interesting.
I
How's
think
that?
we have to,
Which is nice.
yeah, and we're doing a balance between a volunteer position and reasonable compensation. And so how much do people think that doing $1,000 a month would increase the pool? I think it would probably be
quite a bit.
is significant. So,
A hell of a lot more than 300.
yeah. What are you thinking? I see your head turning. Really strong.
I guess I struggle more with the cap. That,
Well, if
You
it's
know.
not, if it's out of their hands and it's. pegged to-
well, not that, I
Right.
mean, but the, 10 years, what does that look like?
inflation goes
It
up.
depends on
Yeah,
inflation.
agreed.
So, I mean, in 100 years, we don't expect people to make $1,000 a month. That's not gonna be worth anything in 100 years.
And in 20 years, in 10 years, if it becomes an issue, I think to do a charter on.
Yeah.
To reset it.
I'll just throw out that you guys talked about tying it to CPI. That is how all of our contracts under our purchase, that's how we tie our contracts. We can do an automatic renew as long as it's with the vendors' new prices for the next year are within the published CPI.
So you have a published CPI number.
We picked the Denver area CPI.
Is that what you do for employees or just?
That's a
For
whole,
contracts.
but just for contracts,
Vendor.
for vendor contracts, for employees, our HR department has a,
We do a market study
Yeah.
to compare positions in our labor market. It's a lot more complicated than.
Yeah, and so that may be hard to do for
Yeah, I like the CPI.
CPIs, works
Especially since you already generated, it's really easy.
Just treat the council as contractors, right? Increase their pay. Okay, so do we have, yes, you're still concerned.
I'm probably a minority, so,
Still want to hear your voice.
but I voice it as, my concern. There being some sort of gap years to come, but it can be addressed in a minute, so.
And if we, because if we take it out of their hands, right?
Yeah.
It's like the whole thing with like unlimited PTO, right? People, they have it, they never use it. And so like with the power to adjust your pay by ordinance, you may never use it because it's a political landmine, like you said. But then that pulls out, people who can run, who can serve. And I think that does the town a disservice because it cuts out a huge chunk of the potential pool. Like you won't get young people or students serving unless they have, are independently wealthy or have other means.
And doing districts does somewhat artificially restrict pools as well.
So I think we need to, if we're already restricting the pools by districting, we probably want to do a little bit to get them expanded. But if we take it out of the hands of the council to adjust their own pay, and we can do them. That was my thought.
Do we need a vote?
I don't know. Anyone feel strongly against setting a cap, so do we set to pay them in the charter?
I think we have to set a starting
Yeah.
point.
Set a starting point, adjust it,
And you put it in, I think you also want to put in the year it starts.
I would think when this charter starts, we make it 1,000 and 1,500 is my proposal, adjusted with CPI every year.
in January. Yeah, to take effect with.
To take effect
the new
with when the
council.
charter, the first election after the charter is approved.
I propose 12 and 2,000.
12 and 2. Any other proposals?
I agree with Bob.
1,000 and 15.
Yeah.
Candace?
Yes, I feel like that's not high, but
It's not hot.
I mean,
I'm open
from
to
300,
suggestions.
from 300, I just feel like that's a big jump, but.
Yeah.
Right.
But 300 is
I hear
mandatory.
what you're saying.
Just 300 and I feel like.
And how long has it been?
It's not hard to pull this 100,000. 300 is appropriate.
Well,
Older in 2020 was only, or is 108,000, we're at 30,000.
Yeah.
So what is theirs at now? It's 220, so times
220
4.
times 52.
I think that's
$11,000 a year.
That's what Boulders is.
That's what Boulders is, but Longmont's more than that. Longmont's smaller, not much.
I guess it depends then.
I don't know, I'm happy, I do like 1,015 because when it's Longmont and it's clean, but I also feel like compensating people
fairly.
for
Yeah.
doing this work. I mean. I
Well,
haven't done
especially
it.
because we have, like, we're not like, we're growing still, right? So we want people who are vested in it and getting something from it to make responsible decisions.
I don't know that the difference in population is so significant, or it causes that big of a difference in responsibility for the job.
I agree.
You know, you still have development applications, you still have ordinances, you still have
It works.
probably
there.
more development applications going on here than other places. Just because the population is greater, you're representing more people, doesn't mean your job is easier with less people.
Well, that's why I'm arguing for 1,000. I don't think I'd ever agree to a 1,200 starting
12
point.
and 2,
12
12 and 2,000.
Yeah. I'm good with,
That seems high to me. I know it's,
Again, he's balancing the civic responsibility and whatever.
And
it's a
volunteer,
volunteer,
yeah.
quote unquote
That you're
volunteer,
paid
you
for.
run for it, you have extra expenses, things like that, so.
So, yeah, the election is not the consideration, it's just the time you're gonna be spending and the dedication and the pre-work you're gonna be doing.
Yeah.
How much of that are you gonna do for 300 or 1,000 or 1,200?
Throw some numbers on the board, and vote.
I was gonna say, let's do
yeah,
it.
let's do it.
Let's,
So we had, I know we had 1,000, 1,500, we had 1,200, 2,000. And as you mentioned, 8 and 12. Brian mentioned 8 and 12.
Okay, sorry, start over.
800 and 1,200. So the council,
I heard 800 and 1,200.
Yeah, 1,000, 1,500.
And 2,000. Isn't really proportional, is it?
Well, and I guess it needs to be said too, I mean, as of right now, could the town afford that number for their council?
Yes. We have a $90 million budget.
The first two are.
Yeah,
We can't have an attorney at our meetings.
That's because she's.
that doesn't have to do with the.
No, she
I
said
thought
it was
that
the cost.
it was the cost.
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
she
they didn't
said.
allow.
So we had discussions after that, and I had made a formal request, and it came down to Hillary's availability.
Okay.
Oh.
When we're told it's the
They tried to
cost and
play
we're
it the
looking
other
at
way
numbers,
before.
it definitely
It wasn't.
Cause that was
so-
the first thing Hillary threw out there.
Right.
creates.
But that was,
Lawyers cost
so
money.
what she said was,
What's the other alternative?
she said her issue was that what had already been allocated. That's all that was allocated once a month.
Right.
And so to increase that, we would have to request more. And so I did that request to get more. But then we came down to twice a month because of her availability specifically.
And there's a D, which is per meeting rather than per month. We might as well include it while we're talking to someone.
Well,
I don't think anyone felt strongly about that.
I thought we said by month just so it'd be easy and.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would reduce town overhead.
Yeah.
I think
Good.
You already know my vote, so.
Is town payroll monthly or?
Bi-monthly, or no, bi-weekly, sorry.
But yeah, we can have it, like, we can say this much per month paid bi-weekly, so it lines up with your payroll.
Or you
Well,
just,
we currently get paid monthly. Get paid monthly.
yeah, they have it set up.
That's okay.
it's easy enough.
It's easy, it's easier that way. It
And cheaper.
it was hard to pay per, because by month, by meeting, which is technically what is in our. Is that right?
Code.
Well, yeah, in our code, it's you get a flat rate plus $25 a month for every other meeting you might attend representing the town. That gets to be a nightmare because then somebody has to keep a timesheet of who's what.
Yeah, we were going to have to submit like essentially an expense report in order to get that paid, and no one ever did it, but I know.
So it just is assumed that it got rounded, it's rounded up to the max you can get, which is 500 and whatever.
So the current system would be like you can submit for expenses.
Yes, and you could,
Expenses
expenses are different than,
The only time I ever submitted expenses was conferences, and I only did 2 of those during my year.
So I just want to put numbers out here since I calculated them. This is yearly cost to the town for each
For total?
for these pay rates.
thank
So
you.
for the 800, it is 72,000 a year. And this is assuming 6 counselors. For 1,000,
Wait,
So this is only for the council.
this is paying the 6 counselors and the mayor.
And the mayor, but this is just for 6, not any additional.
Correct.
7, okay,
It's a 7 total.
7 total people.
Yes. 90,000. And 110,400. So that's the annual cost of the town to pay each of these rates. And to me, it's already got 4.
Or, I mean, and what's this one?
Real fast. So it's the best spreadsheet. I've done.
Before we, yeah, so does anyone have any other recommendations? Do we want to add a D for any other ideas?
I'm peachy keen with D. That's what
I
I'm voting.
think, I think we should remove one of these options, so we're voting on two.
Yeah.
Is there something we can just throw out? Where did 812 come from?
That was from Ryan, I believe.
So currently it costs the town $27,600 to pay for our elected ordinance.
It's kind of funny, it's less than we pay like our admin checks or something.
Wow.
Oh, sorry, you guys are only worth half of an admin.
Right.
A seventh of that.
2 cents an hour.
So when voters and stuff do the math too, because like that's what I'm thinking about too, because voters are gonna do the math too. And maybe, I mean, when they're campaigning, they could throw things out there like that, but if you go from 27,000 to then you're expecting the voters to vote on a charter where now all of a sudden you have to pay that much. It doesn't matter who they are, they're gonna be like, well, that's a lot of money compared to what we're spending now, so you kind of want to like ease into it.
Okay, then
When you compare it to 90 million, it's nothing.
Well, right, I suppose,
This
right,
is- Yeah,
That's
these
not
are,
what they're reading.
I know.
right,
I know,
exactly.
Doesn't mean you're
Thank
right.
you, yeah,
It's, yeah, I mean, ultimately the goal is to get this passed. I get what you're saying.
yeah.
But I'm not sure people realize how little they get paid today.
I don't think they do.
A lot of people did not. I know.
I didn't, I had no clue.
And so why don't we just, well, why do you think 2 is supposed to 3? Do you think it's
I'm
gonna be
just,
that close?
just to get a vote. I mean, let's just vote.
I think let's just vote.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
just
take it.
All right,
Rain trips.
A,
Anybody? 1
A.
I'll
for
vote for A.
2 for
B. And C. Well.
But it didn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The B's have.
It's a good it's a good distribution. Okay, so I'll ask.
It's a pretty even bell curve.
Yeah. So do we, there's that other stipulation right at the bottom where bona fide expenses and
Yeah.
service. We want to leave that in.
Yeah,
I
you-
think you leave that.
yes, it's important to reimburse expenses when something like a conference is happening.
So then, okay, then we want to do this tag to CPI. Was that,
Yes.
was there an annual
Tag to
increase?
The Denver area CPI.
Yes.
Boulder has something about.
We have our own, but like, I think you can.
No,
Yeah.
we use the Denver one.
Okay,
Yes.
Yeah,
so whatever, I would say.
I would say
let's-
whatever the town uses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's stick it,
yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
That one is Denver for me.
So we'll use a
We
tag
don't
to the
make it up.
CPI used by town for internal pay raises.
Or contract or whatever.
Was it
It's
the
actually
contract?
usually
Contract.
Not-
Okay.
It does, it does.
I'll ask Hillary to write that up then.
Can we do fast? I got oath of office, see if they have any problems.
I
good
like
to
the
me.
oath of office as it is. Mayor pro tem and acting mayor. Basically, mayor pro tem is going to be selected by the council.
So now Candace threw out an idea about that.
The at-large member being the.
Well, if it was a single at-large member, that's-
Or it'd be the whoever had the most votes.
Yeah, I would
At
think
large.
whether it's at large, well, actually, that doesn't make sense. By definition, it would be at large, it'd be at large.
Yeah,
yeah,
If the chances of somebody from a district that has 1/3 or 1/4 of the people getting more votes is very.
Oh,
slim.
no, yeah, it would have to be the at-large person, and it would be whoever got the most. out of the
I'm
two.
more in favor of.
but you're probably voting a different at-large every other.
Yeah, that's what I
Oh,
was
that's true.
thinking.
Yeah.
So it would be, so then you would just stagger it with the mayor.
I mean,
Yeah, but
my feeling is.
I'd rather have the council select.
Does the mayor pro tem do anything?
Oh, they run the meeting when the mayor's not around.
yeah, they're basically.
If your mayor keeps getting pregnant, you have to run the meeting.
Doesn't that violate the code of ethics?
I mean,
I think it
We
would
can-
I know.
totally depend on how that.
Yeah, I think
Plays
we'll
out, so.
leave it as it is for now and then revisit if we have.
I will say that it was nice to be someone selected by everybody, because then it's an agreement. This is the person, we all work with the mayor who was elected by everyone else, but then we all work with the mayor pro tem because we voted for that person. And so there's nothing really that person does until the mayor is unavailable. And if everyone agrees, look, we see that you can run things just fine. As opposed to a brand new person who just got thrown in, voted in, and it may not have the understanding of how to run meetings or
The only,
be in a hot seat.
I'm for the council voting for it, but we do have to remember what happened this last time, so.
Yeah, sour grapes, I was just about to say that. Aren't those great? Aren't those great?
We really need something in the charter.
No
Number
jokes
one
allowed.
rule.
That's, yeah.
No jerks allowed.
All right.
As determined by town clerk.
Debbie, you missed that one.
What one?
You get to determine who was a jerk. on the council.
Oh. Clerk's office is always,
Not partial.
Neutral.
yeah.
I'll
She
do it.
can't out loud.
What she just
Like,
I am
wait.
I am Switzerland always.
Let's keep moving.
All right. Do we want to walk through these or just touch them next?
That's what I was gonna try. So the next goes into just the meeting, like special meetings and executive sessions.
I read through that. I didn't have any issues, although I don't want to rush things, so.
Okay, so we'll tag that since everyone's here. We hopefully won't have a go back for next meeting. So we'll tag section 310 and 311 for a go back next meeting. Did anyone have any questions for 309 subsection 3? 213, I guess. If there's no mayor or mayor pro tem, council selects a new person, and any mayor pro tem or acting mayor shall retain all authorities.
Oh, that's all normal.
Yeah, then they just go back to being what they were. Okay. So that's fine. We'll defer 310 and 311 to the beginning of next meeting, which is next year.
And then maybe 312 for vacancies.
Yeah, so that's, okay, so let me go through, one of the things Hillary requested was doing a recap, kind of like we did last time, just so that she can follow it all at one place. So I'm gonna go through what I have, and please fill in if I forget anything or did not note anything. First thing is that we had a request for Hillary to add a description for the council manager form of government in section 102, just so that it's laid out. Mayor will be selected at large. We'll have 7 councilors. The specific breakdown, we have, 6 councilors, and then the specific district breakdown will be decided later once we have some more information. Sarah has been tagged with doing work with the town to figure out some district sizes based on 3 or 4 districts. If we go for 4 districts, it'll be 1 per with 2 at large. If it's 3 districts, it'll be 2 per district. 4-year terms for all elected officials, staggered. 4 years gap to be, you have to have 4 years gap to be considered not consecutive. 25 signatures required for a district councilor and 56 for at-large or mayor for any of the at-large positions. We need to work on a vacancy and a vacancy filling section, or what defines a vacancy and how we fill vacancies. We need to work on, that's a go back. Another question for Hillary was something about how to ban candidates or counselors or from serving who have active litigation against the town, but without making it onerous to open to abuse by town,
County managers.
Yeah.
And also to make
police
it reasonable for the person.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so there's a 3.3, the Louisville Charter had section 3.3 subsection C to H. That was our, let's see, 303 section, what was that?
Is that ethics?
Was that ethics?
No, that was the additional qualifications.
Right, so that was, we wanted to pull from Louisville a little bit on their additional qualifications, to run on top of just the eligible to vote. Right. So bribery, the non-felony disqualifiers running from office. So that's the Louisville Charter, section 3.3, subsection C through H, to add to our 303, section 1 as qualifications.
That means she has to change this a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, she's gonna send out updates once she's
Yeah.
like gone through, yeah. So then section 303, subsection 2A, we want to make sure that you're only running for one position per election.
Yeah, so what we had that was the.
Yeah.
District.
No, not just that, but like you can't run for mayor and councilor or district and at large at the same time. So
But
anything-
what we do is just, it already says mayor and council.
And then for 303(2)B, we want to make sure that if you're already sitting in office and you're running for another office, the end of your current office has to align with the start of your new one. So you can't run
The start of the one you're running for.
start of what you're running for. So you can't run midterm, lose and remain in office.
Mhm.
That was the.
Sour grapes.
Yes, sour grapes. Let me see. And then beyond that, we had mostly, let's see, 303, 304 council meetings, at least monthly, we'll keep that wording. Malcolm is going to provide wording for section 305, subsection 1. For Kendra had a suggestion to how to allow voice votes and allow for future types of voting, but still make sure that all votes are recorded and confirmed so that if there's any disputes, there's a chance for that to happen. We deferred the emergency ordinance section, the vote requirement until we talk emergency ordinances. We agreed with sections or 305 subsection 2, 3, and 4. Or sorry, 3 and 4. 2 was deferred. Code of ethics, we will defer that. We all agree that we need some more discussion about how we're going to define all of that. And with a potential, based on my suggestion, to go in transparency for the town. Compensation, we have it at 1,000 per month, paid monthly for council members, and 1,500 a month for mayor, tagged to the CPI the town uses for contractor increases to take effect
After the charter takes effect.
after the charter takes effect and January, like all of the pay increases will take over for January. Oath of office, we were okay with how that's written. And then, yeah, 309 and 310, sorry. Yeah, 309 and 310, we were okay, except we're gonna revisit. No, we're okay with the mayor pro tem, right? We agree with that. Okay, so we're not gonna revisit that one. Yeah. And then we will defer special meetings and executive sessions. Most of that seemed pretty boilerplate, but we'll defer that to our go back for next meeting.
Oh, I think we are gonna defer back to mayor pro tem once we figure out what we're doing with the
Yes,
districts.
that's right. That is right. Sorry.
And then vacancies.
Yeah, we're gonna have a new section. So the 2 new sections we kind of wanna go back to is an ethics section and a vacancy filling section
Yes,
at some point.
we just made our long one longer.
Yeah. Well, we have a bunch of public meeting ones that we can try to.
No, this is good, this is good, this is stuff that needs to be done.
Okay,
Yeah, and can I say that, if the 5th goes long, that the 16th we set as kind of an open meeting just for public comment. So if nobody shows up, we can kind of you guys can kind of catch up.
and I think that'll be hopefully we'll be able to use at least some part of each of those meetings as we go forward for actual go backs and revisits and the new sections that we might want to add. Okay, I think that is good. I think we're good. That's our recap. So if anyone have any last minutes or anything I missed in our recap?
You just pass the name tags and we can just collect.
For our agenda, we're just following, we're gonna finish out section 3 and then move on to the next ones.
Yes. Okay. And